left the wrong tab open and it started playing twice for me, man. It was going in my head and then it was going in my head again. And I think it's still playing. Hi, welcome to the program. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's Tuesday. It's August 27th, 2024. I'm joined by the sultry Ben Pack. Benjamin BP, the oil man.
The oil must flow. I drink your milkshake. Remember my catchphrase?
Yeah, I remember it from your milkshake catchphrase.
Me and Paul F. Tompkins hanging out, talking about drinking each other's milkshakes.
Yep. Was that? I never really. I'm not really a big. I don't really. Is that a sex thing? I don't really get like a lot of like subtext on things.
Yeah, really there's layers and levels. That's why Paul Thomas Anderson is such a like genius. Is he will write something and you watch it once and you're like, oh, he's talking about oil and he's talking about sucking up and it's corporate greed and it's like greed, American evil, and then you think about it and you're like, no, he's thinking about sucking something else up, a different kind of great American evil.
Yes, the greatest American evil of them all. What were we talking about?
We need to go back to Puritan times. We need to get back on cornflakes for every meal. We need to get back all this like, oh, I'm a freak. Well, I'm going to match my freak. Like, no, come on. We used to be a proper country back in the 1800s.
I see. Okay, yes, I see. Oh, we're podcasting. Okay, yeah, all right, finally.
I've been out of the game for a little bit, but I heard
this is what all the podcasts are like now. This is where the money is.
Get a little more. I'm trying to help you out, Jeff.
Thank you. This is finally the pivot is here. It's time to make some real money.
Your ads, it's going to be a lot easier to get ads, but they're going to be a lot worse.
Great.
I
love it. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect for me. I have a lot of things I need to get off my chest here. About America, about the DNC. Did you see this? No, I didn't. Did you watch any of this stuff?
A little bit.
I could not, man. I did not watch any of either of them. I'm just like, why would I watch this? Why would I subject myself to like I don't like to use the word, but like this like cringe fuck people, you're not cool. Stop it.
No, yeah.
None of you.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, things felt really bad for a while.
Yes.
And then for a moment it was like maybe things aren't gonna be as bad as I thought. And then it will be just in a different way.
Sure, yeah. And I still feel better about that.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things.
Yay!
It's like, okay, yes. Proper. Yes. But
that good old-fashioned USA chant. Not the bad kind of USA chant, the good kind of USA chant.
Exactly, yes. The actual on-brand American flags, not weird ones that are sending some alternative message about, like, here's what I'm really mad about. I drew a snake on my flag.
I think you would like this. There is a house not too far from me, but they have two giant flags, and it's the Don't Tread on Me flag and a Raiders flag.
Great. Yes, that's just the Bay Area, baby.
Yeah.
But like, it's hard being a Raiders fan in the Bay Area because a lot of them are getting tread on a lot by the Raiders leaving the yay. They still call it the yay area. We still. I don't.
You can still call it that.
Great.
You still have. You spend enough time here. You put in the work.
I see a lot of stuff about like here's how you know that someone is from Southern California versus Northern California, and all of it boils down to like if you say the word "the" before the numbers on the freeway. But like I always did that, even when I lived up there.
Yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, I get on the 101, and then we got to get on that Deuce 80, baby, and then and so I don't know, like maybe I was just born for Southern California.
Yeah,
born to melt away in the heat.
I drive now I got my
How's that
license
going?
last year. It's going
Yeah.
really well. I mean, I haven't been in any catastrophic car accidents yet, but it's almost been a year. So I
Mhm.
think I can just start like, I don't know, driving. Not like I'm not going to drive drunk,
No,
but like I can loosen up a little bit.
exactly. You can have like as many edibles as you can fit in your mouth.
But
Wait about 20
you let
minutes.
them soak in. You don't eat them all at once because then you're going to get too high.
No,
You're like,
exactly.
"Ah," you
That's
just,
like no,
kinda
yeah.
keep
You,
'em
you
in
gotta
your-
you gotta soak it. A little pinch between the cheek and gum. It's like
Zin, but for
Zins
edible.
yes.
I'm-
Ben, you're a kid. What the fuck happened? What? I turned around and Zins were
And
everywhere.
people are putting spikes in their lips so they
Yeah.
can feel something.
What the fuck happened?
Because they needed
We
to
used
move
to be a
past vaping.
country.
Vaping is cringe now, Jeff.
I agree. It always was. It was, as my roommate, I love the guy, but he vaped and I let him vape inside. And after he moved out, my microfiber couch smelled like blueberry cotton candy or something. It was just a fucking nightmare. And it's just gross.
But now you got little pouches that you can kind of like stick around everywhere and like under table. Oh my God, I just realized that there's probably Zin under classroom tables in high school all over the place. Oh
yeah, probably.
Oh gosh.
My dad, I at one point for my birthday, he said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I want you to stop smoking." And he was super fucking bummed out. But he went, "All right." And so he started chewing tobacco instead. And the hottest latest then, this would have been like late 80s, early 90s. I forget what it was. Were Skull Bandits. Have you heard of these?
Oh, I know Skull. I don't know the Bandit.
Skull is yes, it was a brand. But Bandits it was a pouch. So it wasn't like you were taking like loose, like a bunch of fucking sticks and, cramming them leaves in your mouth. It was in a fancy little pouch. Then you could just take the pouch out of the thing and put it in there. And then it would be, I mean, it was still disgusting. You still had to dispose of the pouch, which, as, working in a tire shop that was dirty all the time. Anyway, he would, sometimes throw them at people and it was unsavory.
I found a vintage ad for Skull Pouch. Apparently now Skull Pouch is the name of a race car, an Indy car sponsored by Skull. Since they don't make the pouch anymore, now you can just follow the action of the Skull Pouch. But I love this. I love this ad. If I can just for a second here. A lot of smokers want to enjoy tobacco, but don't want to light up. Skull Bandits, the Bandit is the car. Skull Bandits is an easy alternative. It's an individual portion of wintergreen flavored tobacco in a neat little pouch. It's easy to put in, easy to take out. Just a pouch between your lip and gum or wherever feels comfortable. You'll get real tobacco pleasure without lighting up.
Hang on, wherever feels go. No, sorry, go on.
I mean, it's winter. It's got to be, it's refreshing.
I want to feel something.
Try Skull Bandits. 28 pouches to a can. We think you'll like taking a pouch instead of a puff.
So they weren't even marketing it as like a cleaner alternative to chewing tobacco. It was just like, here's chewing tobacco, but it's in a pouch. They were just like, hey man, don't smoke. Instead, get lip cancer. And then after some years of that, I think my dad he got scared of lip cancer, and so he switched back to smoking. So when I first heard about Zins over the last, I don't know, few years, they were just seemingly wherever. Like I was scrolling through TikTok, and it was just like these unassuming, nice-looking kids in their 20s or whatever, and they were just like, yeah, well, anyway, I did, and then I took a Zin, and you're just like, how has this happened to this nice young lady that she's like fucking doing TikToks about Zins? It made me feel bad or scared. It made me realize like big tobacco will find a fucking way. No matter what they have to do, they will come up with a new product. They will figure out a way to market to the youths. Whatever they have to do, they'll make it work.
They had to be sweating when like cigarettes became cringe, right? Because that was it forever. It was cigs all the way, and they had pouches, they had chewing tobacco, they had stuff like that. But those were always so niche, right? Those were always like for people who wanted to not smoke but still smoke. Yeah. And then
Solid Snake came along smoking a digital cigarette, and people were like, "Oh, this is the way."
I remember the first time I saw an electronic cigarette. Just one of those old school ones that like looked like a cig, but you plugged it into the wall. Yeah. At the house of the guy who taught me how to hack an Xbox.
Was he charging it on an Xbox? Was the? 'Cause I feel like if you're not charging some kind of electronic cigarette or vape device on a game console,
On a hacked game console.
yes, especially on a hacked game console, you're really not living to the fullest. And what did you do? Was this an original Xbox? Are we talking 360? Are you JTagging? What are we doing here?
I was in college, so I'm going to say it was a 360. But he's like, look, I got every Gears of War on here, which at the time was 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, you're like, wow, it's a big hard drive, buddy.
And then he made me play like the beginning. I was like, oh, I've never played these, and they're not really my thing. He's like, oh, you gotta. And then I played like 20 minutes of Gears of War 1 and just kind of walked and talked for a while.
Yeah. I was gonna say that first 20 minutes is maybe not the. I mean, look, I like Gears of War. I'm not gonna shit on it, but but also it's very much that game. It's very much the dude. You got to see this.
It's the Xbox version of the dude. You got to see this, which is Uncharted 2. Those are the two sides of the dude. You got to see this.
Yeah. Are you, so do you think that guy is excited for the reboot of Gears of War coming that's going to, retell the story of Marcus and Dom,
it's like a full reboot.
It's some kind of, it is some kind of early version of their love story.
But like now isn't everything like a multiverse now? So is it going to be like Dom from the future? Like, it's going to be the past, but also it's going to be some like light Final Fantasy shit where
probably, yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. If it's not that, it's going to be like an Assassin's Creed style thing, and it's going to be like, oh, none of it was real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's been a big suddenly over the last 7 days or so, there's just suddenly been a lot of games to talk about. It's been a really news heavy summer, and not always a ton of big new video games. You've been playing. I've never heard of it. No one has ever heard of this game. I understand you've been playing Deadlock.
Is that what? Wait, that's what you wanted me to come up? Because you told me, you're like, oh, we're gonna talk about the huge Valve thing. Like, come by the show. And so I thought, I got the whole. It starts in a week, Jeff. Are you ready? I thought you were like finally ready to take the plunge and.
All right,
learn
look.
Dota with me. And
I reinstalled Dota.
No!
About 2 months ago, because someone told me they put a fighting game into Dota.
Oh yeah, yeah. Did you play it?
Yeah, I did. I did play it, and I was like, "This is cute for a thing they like cobbled onto the front end of Dota."
Right? Totally. Hey, it has frame data when you pause. You can look at like. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I understand it's going to be shipped separately under the name 2XKO. So looking forward to that.
You've already talked about that game. I haven't. This is not the time to talk about Riot Games, Jeff.
So I have not talked about 2XKO. I did not get into their like alpha thing that they had. So I am interested in it, except for the part where it seems like they're making a versus game, and like all of their stuff around like we want to make a game that is easy for kind of new players, and so like the old like Rising Thunder. All the stuff they did there around like trying to get people exposed to new games and have fun. Some of that feels undone when they're like, now pick 2 characters. And you're like, okay, like you're going to get a bunch of players that have to wrap their mind around what one character can do. This is kind of it just seems like a weird choice.
I agree. Yeah, I didn't play any myself, but just from seeing clips and stuff and streams of it, I was surprised by how intense it seems. I really did think it was going to be like, hey, League of Legends player who's maybe curious about fighting games, come check this out. And I knew it was a versus game, but I thought like it would be the very like baby versus game where you like, because like, there are other like tag games that anyone can kind of pick up and play. But it seemed like this is like very technical, very akin to a BB cross tag where you're sometimes like, you have setups for your partner. It just, it seemed a little more intense.
And as someone who plays fighting games, like that's cool. Like I'm happy to play a game that has a lot going on. But it just seems like a weird choice for like the thing that they're trying to, whatever they said prior to, getting bought by Riot and all the other stuff they were trying to do. This just seems like a little bit out of step with
This feels like a good time to come on and say, I think it was the last time I was on this show, I was like, this Riot fighting game is going to eat Street Fighter 6's lunch. And
yeah.
Well, it's still not out yet. And
right.
Street Fighter 6 has been doing just fine for plenty of time now.
Yes.
So I was a little off the mark there, for sure.
It's still possible. By the time they ship it, maybe Street Fighter 6 will be on a downward slope. They'll have run out of, Terry Bogard will be in the game. So like, what more do you do after that?
Oh, he looks so cool.
He looks so good.
He has the Z-axis shit. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yes. I'm so fucking excited. I had an opportunity and I wasn't able to do it just because the timing didn't work out. But Capcom had a thing where they were going to show people some of their Gamescom stuff. So some people got to play Monster Hunter Wilds and a few other things. And I want to say that Terry was part of that presentation. I don't know for sure if people played it, but they said, hey, we'll have some Street Fighter stuff there. And I was like, oh shit. Did I miss playing as Terry Bogard? But whatever, he'll be out soon enough. It's it's not that big a deal. So the international, who do you got? Who's left? What is esports?
This is
Team Secret. Is Team Secret still a thing?
They're still a thing. I don't really know anymore. Valve got rid of their majors system, which was basically like 3 to 4 majors a year leading up to the international. And since that happened, I kind of stopped paying attention completely. And this year it's in Copenhagen. So that because of the time difference, I probably wouldn't even be able to watch any of it anyway, unless I want to wake up super early to watch finals, which I don't really care anymore because I'm never going to play Dota again.
Because you're playing Dota 3.
Because I'm playing Ice Frog Presents Dota 3.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeff.
So the worst kept secret in video games, but I don't know. I get the impression that they never really cared about that. They were just like, whatever. We need eyes on this game, and we don't have time to fucking get lawyers involved and all this horse shit. So just whatever.
We don't want everyone streaming it and everyone just because they're making big changes every week, every 2 weeks. They're like, hey man, if you want to talk IRL with your friends about this game or in a private Discord channel about this game, go off. But just don't be a jerk. Yeah.
It felt like a friends and family beta that suddenly had tens of thousands of people in it. And at some point you look at that and you're like, okay, well, eventually someone is going to leak more of it. But whatever, it had already kind of leaked. Yeah. So, but I don't know.
You could
Some
look
people
on YouTube
were
and see clips. You could look on Reddit and see clips. It was out there if you knew where to look.
Yeah. It wasn't like Valve was strongly policing this stuff to begin with. They were just like, hey man, just don't. That was their NDA. Just don't. Which I respect that in a weird way because it just, I don't know, for a game that they were very dramatically and obviously working on, it lined up. It made sense. You're like, I see why you don't want people getting out there and being like, here's a build guide for the guy with the fire shoots out of his fingertips. Because that's all going to change in 2 weeks or whatever. But I don't know. At the same time, it was destined to be this way. So they finally just lifted the restrictions or whatever. And so you have been playing.
I've been
Deadlock
playing for a couple months.
Every night I look at Steam because every night I turn on my Steam Deck to go play Mario's Picross for the Game Boy, and I see that you are online playing Deadlock.
And constantly. Let me tell you, it's just been a real everyone I've ever played Dota with for the last 12 years has come together. I'm talking to people I haven't talked to in years, and we're just sliding right back in, and it feels like we're learning a new Dota game. And it's interesting. It's good. Okay, here's my top line take.
Deadlock. Is it good?
Deadlock. I think it's pretty good. I think it's just really for how complicated it is. Here's my real summation of Deadlock after playing for a couple months, 100 hours or so. It's an insanely complicated game that is not going to be for everyone. and shouldn't work as well as it does. It shouldn't, for how much crazy shit is in that game, for how many levels deep of like, if you're trying to be good at this game, all the things you have to consider and think about and do, you can just pick it up if you've played a hero shooter, if you've played really like, I feel like at this point, anyone who is hopping into a competitive shooter game knows how to play a shooter game where you have like abilities on a cooldown. An Overwatch, an Apex, like at this point, like unless you're like only a COD player or only a CS player,
everything is bled into everything else to an extent to where you've probably at least fucked around with a game that has abilities and cooldowns.
You can hop into a game and you can pick one of the more simple heroes. Like they, suggest a handful of heroes for new players.
I played as the guy with the fireman, which seems like he shoots fire out of his fingers. Yeah. Sure, Infernus. Yeah. I know him by his old name from, Defense of the,
Johnny Firehands.
Exactly,
They had to change it for legal reasons because of a Blizzard thing. But like I think anyone could pick up this game, and this will be amplified a lot if you're playing with friends, especially if you're playing with like friends who know the game. But anyone can pick up this game and I think have a decent time. Be overwhelmed for sure, but like the shooting, solid. The movement, I think nice, like pretty nice. Like there's some base level like competitive shooter, movement shooter stuff. Those are the games I always gravitated more towards, an Apex, a Titanfall, kind of like focused on fast movement and tracking rather than like precise flick shots and aim, even though there are characters that benefit from that in this game. You can pick it up. You can pick one of the pre-built guides of like, here's just some items you should buy and have a decent enough time. Shoot some creeps, shoot some guys, push some towers.
Yeah.
Hey, you played a game of Deadlock. And then if you're a sicko, like me.
Yeah. If you really want to get locked in, as they say.
That's good. For a moment, I'm going to say a couple of days, was like, what if I just get on X.com, the everything app, make a new account called like Deadlocked In, get that blue check, and just start pumping out garbage.
Yeah.
And like see what it's like because I've been curious about X, the everything app, recently, like what it's like to try to be like a guy who is like
trying to be everything on the everything app.
Yeah. Like I thought about like, what does that hustle look like from the other side? Because we see the content bait and sludge and shit. I'm like on X, the everything app, less and less these days, but like I still, you see just like, what's the best time in a movie where a guy punched another guy, and then like it gets a bunch of quote reposts,
reacts. Threads has become that as well. Threads was maybe always that, but like the engagement, the like very generic, like, hey, I need some. I saw one last night that made me set my phone down and go to sleep, and it was, just bought a Steam Deck. I think I'm going to need to get an SD card. Anyone have any recommendations? And I've almost responded. I almost hit reply and said, yeah, you should buy a fucking SD card. Have you considered maybe going to the internet and just a Best Buy, like, if you can go to the gas station maybe and get a fucking micro. You should do that.
But how many gigs, Jeff? How many gigs? Oh my God, I don't even know.
Just look at the prices and whatever you feel comfortable with. This is my fucking micro SD card buyer's guide. As someone who buys a fair amount of micro SD cards. If you need one, just get one. It's fine. Figure out
autoplay ads.
Right, yes, exactly. That's how I need to. And it needs to be over a minute because you can't monetize on TikTok unless this video is over 60 seconds long. But YouTube Shorts can only be 60-second long, and that is the trap.
Oh, you can't just cross upload. I don't know TikTok. That's the one app I managed to completely stay off of.
If you like to watch 61-second clips of the TV show House, might I recommend TikTok? Where videos go to live. I think that's their slogan. I don't know.
Do they have the one where the guy from Harold and Kumar commits suicide and it's really sad?
Not yet, but maybe you could be the one to chop that episode up into chunks and post it and say, come back for part 2.
And then it ends and you don't know why he did it. And that's the whole point.
Holy shit.
Sometimes you just don't. Even House couldn't figure it out. And
I have never seen an episode of House, but I feel like an expert in the television show House.
Do you know he does drugs?
Yes. Yes, crazy. I did.
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor and he takes drugs. It's crazy. And there's a girl and she's a model and then the father is the manager and he just like breaks. House just goes like on a hunch. He's just like, you're fucking your daughter, huh? And then the guy goes, just once. And then it ended. And then it ended and I didn't see the next video. So I don't know what happened in that episode.
Oh, he got arrested, I'm sure. It's
yes. Yeah. But yeah.
Just once. Whoever wrote that was spitting. That's good. That's good writing right there.
That's good television right there. And so like I love a lot of things now. The television show House, the remake of the film Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, and Connor.
Every clip of that I've seen looks like a fucking awesome movie. Every time I see 61 seconds of that film on TikTok, I'm like, damn, dude, I gotta watch this. Because he's fighting 5 guys in the street and he's just chill the whole time. They're like, we're gonna fuck you up. And he's like, yeah, where's the nearest hospital? So you guys gotta go there after. And it's this one clip is the clip that you see every time. I've seen this one clip and I watch it every time because it's so good of him like getting it. And a lot of times they will cut the violence out. And so you'll see them start to swing and then there'll be a flash to the other end of it because they don't want to get demonetized on TikTok. And so that's nice. I feel like I'm watching like the, Jesus Network version of a movie. And that's a good time as well. But yes, the reboot of the film Roadhouse, Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher, similar scene.
Okay.
Where like they're in the street and there's like 5 dudes that want to kick his ass and he's just like, all right, man, well, this is going to go bad for you, but this is your last chance to not do this. And then sure enough, he fucks all those guys up. And I'm like, yeah, I should see this. I should watch this whole
Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
Before they made him woke and tall.
Yes. And now he looks like the books. Tom Cruise doesn't look like that's the only other thing I know about Jack Reacher is that people were like, Tom Cruise doesn't look like Jack Reacher from the books.
And you're like, are they picture books?
I was like, I don't know. I think no, they describe him as having big hands. You don't understand. I need this. And so I'm told that the Reacher, the TV show Reacher is actually quite good as well. And I've seen some clips of that make me go like,
But yeah, nothing where he's chill and then fights 5 guys in a street.
No, but he's been like chill and getting arrested in a diner. And so that was good.
This single-handedly is like, I've been missing out on TikTok, man.
Dude, I got to tell you, the current TikTok meta has been...
All I get on YouTube Shorts, which is the only way I see like that style of content, is clips from the show Invincible. I've never watched like you're saying about House, I've never watched an episode of Invincible, but I can tell you like anything about it. I know all about the Bermuda Lights and the Nathan Explosion or whatever his name is, and like all the multiple girl, and there's all these guys.
That does sound good.
There's lizards.
Okay. I like lizards.
There's one clip where she got all small and she go inside a guy to try and like make him explode from the inside out, but he just like goes and he crushes her inside of him.
Fuck. It sounds really good. I was gonna say, like the movie Interspace, but what you described sounds way better. What you described sounds like a Mortal Kombat fatality now.
Yeah.
And I'm on board. But Deadlock, so like there have been other there's been other action MOBAs, right? I mean, Smite 2 just went into like permanent closed alpha today. And what's it called? Paragon just came back again as predecessor. What else? Super Monday Night Combat. There's been a number of games that have tried to like thread Battleborn. There's a long legacy of great games. that have tried to thread the needle on this like behind the back third person action MOBA thing. And so when I played Deadlock, I was like, oh, okay, they made one of these. Only it's got rails in it that you can ride. Okay. Huh. And it did not do much for me. But I did like the idea of like as you're so like the last hit, or the idea of like the balls that fly off the guy's heads and you shoot those to get bonus XP or whatever. I was like, okay, they're making this like mechanic rich in terms of like the things you're supposed to do.
That kind of goes back to what I was saying, right? So like okay, like the iceberg meme, where it's like like the deeper you go, like with a game like this, it's
real
like,
icebergs turned out are similar to that.
Really? This is like this is a good piece of lore. This would be like halfway down the iceberg. I didn't know that.
All right, yeah.
Like Titanic is at the top, right? And then
yep.
The
icebergs from Ice Climber for the NES, right there next to it.
And then Wobbling is under that. But that's banned now. I mean, Jeff, thoughts on the Wobbling ban in the competitive Melee scene?
I think it's about time they did it. My daughter has been playing Melee, and I don't want her to get exposed to that type of filth. I want her to play an honest game of Smash. She's beat the game with, let's call it 7 or 8 characters.
Ooh, she's gonna unlock Mewtwo.
Yeah, I often have to fight the final boss fight myself, and so I've gotten pretty good at beating that stupid fucking hand.
Excuse me, his name is Master Hand, okay, and he is the reason that all of those guys are alive and fighting in the first place. So please be a little respectful, because he's very magical.
Okay.
And then there's also Crazy Hand, but we don't talk about that guy.
No, I don't want to get into a conversation. We'll be here all day talking about Crazy Hand.
So like in Deadlock, right? So you're in your lane, right? And you're shooting. And you're like, I understand hero shooters. I'm gonna move around. I'm gonna get some last hitting. It's just shooting creeps, and then you get the little ball sometimes. You can, and then there's like a fun little push-pull there where you're like, okay, if I'm focusing on last hitting and securing these souls, which are basically act as experience and gold kind of combined, they passively level you up, and then you can use them to buy items. So you get 50 souls for getting a last hit, and then the little orb pops off, and if you secure that, you get another 50. If the enemy gets it, they get 50, right? So you're pretty encouraged to hit your last hits, and
clean up after your kills, make sure the opposing team doesn't get any benefit from that process.
That gives you a pretty good opportunity when you realize that the other player is like really locked into that. You get some harass going. You start taking some shots at them. You start using your abilities on them. And so even before this game opens up, it's really complicated is not the right word. There's a really high skill gap in just like laning. There's a lot of things you can think of. And there's stuff like once you get 500 souls, you get your first item. And those have massive impact to the game. Most of them provide like some sort of passive boost, like gun damage or health and regen and stuff like that, and then some sort of special thing unique to that item, like one will do more damage to creeps specifically, one will do more magic damage. If you hit them for at least 100 magic damage, it'll instead hit it for 150, right? So like if you're a caster kind of hero, you go for that, and it just really starts opening up, and then you start thinking about like, well, the other lane's like right over there, and I'm playing a hero with a stun. Can I just like sneak off for 10 seconds and go gank this other guy in this other lane? And then they push the tower, they get a kill, and then they push the tower, and it just starts opening up in a way that like that's how Dota is, right? If you in Dota, when you win the lane, it opens up the map because there's no more tower to teleport to anymore. The farm opens up in the jungle, the map, you start to roam around, whatever. This game is a lot faster. Game matches are comparable in length to Dota, I would say.
I was going to say, I saw, because when you fire up the client, you can spectate matches and stuff, and you'll find matches that are just like, where this one's in its 32nd minute or whatever. And I'm like, I don't have 32 minutes to do anything anymore.
I had one game go an hour. I'd say most of them are in the 30 to 45 minute range. So like comparable to Dota.
Sure.
But like, I feel like the first 15 to 20 minutes of this game are a lot faster than Dota, which I think like is a thing that puts a lot of like, I like laning in Dota. I like the mechanics of like, I play support in Dota, and that's really where like the support shines, is at the beginning when you're the most powerful hero, because at level 1 supports have really good spells usually, and the carries don't really have anything. You're just there to make sure the carry can get some farm, some experience, and then late game they'll carry you, right?
Mm-hmm.
This game doesn't really have dedicated roles like that. There are some heroes that have healing and kind of buffs and stuff, and there are some heroes that need more farm and are just like kind of like quote unquote carries, but everyone's a threat at all times basically, so it creates these really dynamic lanes with a lot of action, and towers fall really fast. After like 5 minutes, if you've got a couple items and you win one team fight, you kill the other 2 guys in your lane, you can take a tower pretty much from full health.
Okay.
So the map opens up really quick, and the map itself is huge. It's massive, like for as far as a multiplayer shooter goes.
Yeah, so when I played it, I just kind of stayed in my lane, so I didn't really get a good sense of just like, you know, hey, how big is this thing? And then I got to like where the kind of final, you know, you get to their tree monster, you know, whatever it is in this game, robots.
What is it called?
An ancient
patron.
No, patron. You're right. Yeah. And that fight just seemed weird, because it's like, okay, I'm blowing up this thing, and then it's other things appearing, and now we're fighting that, and like that was a part of the game that I was like, oh, hopefully they should lift the entire final confrontation out of this game and come up with something else, because this just seems like weird.
Should be like a penalty kick where you kind of take turns.
There you go.
Shooting at each other in like a one-on-one kind of thing. But like, I definitely think this game is going to be too much for a lot of people. I think this game is going to do.
That was exactly
well,
I played it and I was like, oh, okay. Like it wasn't that it was too much. It was like, this is an action MOBA. This isn't a hero shooter. This is not like, they are making a game for Dota sickos that want to do it from a different perspective. And I'm go with God, man. Like I don't want to do that.
Yeah, totally. If you're not a lane fucker, then this game probably won't be for you. But I think this will open up the idea of this packages MOBAs in a way that is on the surface more accessible. It looks more accessible because it like looks like a hero shooter. And there's no warding. There's, you know, they've removed some stuff from the core MOBA experience. I think that streamlines it a bit and lets the player focus more on just like shooting guys, right? Like there's plenty of jungle creeps around. So like if you don't have anything to do in your lane, you can pop off and just like shoot some NPCs for a little bit. Or they've added like jump pads now. And so sometimes like if I don't have anything to do, I'll just get up on a roof and kind of look around and survey the battlefield. And like a lot of times you can see 2 lanes pretty clearly. It's a 4-lane game, I should specify, kind of like 2 longer side lanes and then 2 pretty straight shot lanes down the middle. You can get just like a POV and kind of see where things are at. And if you're playing with friends, kind of communicate like, oh, they're all rotating off of blue. Like there's a big objective in the middle that you can kind of forces big fights around. And so like,
is there a secret shop? Is there a Roshan? Like, how is there like equivalents to some of these other concepts that show up here too, or is it?
The mid boss is kind of a Roshan like thing. I've kind of, after you play enough Dota, you realize that there needs to be some sort of like objective that's in the middle-ish of the map, because like there will be scenarios where your team's ahead, the other team, your team's like slightly ahead, and the other team knows it, and so they're going to be playing super passively. And so you need something that kind of like exists as something that's going to really power up your team. So the buff you get from killing the boss in the middle gives you like half your respawn. Your next respawn is half time. Your creeps are stronger, and you have like faster zip lines. So like it encourages you to like go in, fight, even if you're going to lose. Like maybe you kill a couple guys and then you respawn faster than them and you go finish the job, right?
Right.
So it forces passive play. It counteracts passive play, I guess.
Sure.
It forces people out. There are shops on the map. There's shops in your base, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
There's one shop in each lane that goes away once your first tower has fallen. But there's two like permanent shops kind of asymmetrically placed in the map that like take some time to learn. Everything in this game takes some time to learn. And if you're not the kind of person that either is interested in yourself in learning games, like learning very deep, rich mechanical games, or have a play group that is like all willing to like go in on it because you're just like looking for the new free game to play. Then I think this game won't be that appealing to you, because being the guy who shoots fire and shooting the fire and running around and shooting fire will only get you so far.
That's kind of where I ended up. I was just like, yep, okay, like we won, hooray! But I don't think I want to like. I don't want to take this to the next level. I'm not going to go look at build guides. I'm not going to go like, oh, this is the next skill I need to buy when I do this. And, like I just, it not for me. But that's awesome that it's like, I don't know. Do you get the impression that it is resonating deeply with a lot of other Dota sickos?
Pretty much everyone I follow on Twitch who's a Dota player is playing Deadlock. And some of it is going to be because it's like, wow, Valve put out a new game and it's like, and it's competent. Like, let's check this out. But it has like a fairly, like there's a lot of people. I was trying to look into like the development of this. What's out there about the development of this? There's not a lot, obviously, because like it wasn't real until a couple of weeks ago. But like I forgot that Adrian Finol, who was the principal software engineer for Overwatch. He used to work at Valve and he got rehired at Valve. He was the head of what was it called? The auto chess, Valve's auto chess game. Underworld,
Dota Underlords.
Yeah. He was like that was his game back at Valve, and I'm sure that game came and went, and I'm sure like he's working. There's other people who worked, like a lot of former Blizzard people have joined Valve in the last 4 or 5. I mean, a lot of Blizzard people have left Blizzard.
Sure, yes, that's definitely yes.
And I feel like if you're like a longtime Overwatch guy, or like a longtime anything really guy, Valve could probably make sense as a place to go for you. Like if you've been in the game for a minute,
right.
So they've got a lot of like prestige on this game working on it, and like obviously like this is. I remember hearing that Ice Frog wanted to make a shooter game in the Dota universe, like maybe a year ago. Like he was working on some kind of like shooter, and like I think that was probably maybe it was Dota themed at one point, but I feel like it was probably misunderstood to be like it's like Dota,
right? Because at one point this was Neon Prime, right? This was Neon like a Prime, cyberpunk, like there was kind of even a different visual motif for it. Different from the like, I don't. Would you call it like it's not steampunk per se. It's like there's a little bit of BioShock Infinite in there with the skyhook rail stuff. Yeah,
it's like a little sea. It's like sea and steam and air punk. It's kind of like an Avatar: The Last Airbender punk. You got the different wind elements. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. But if like Ice Frog has been working on Dota since 2005. That's when he got hired on by Ginsu.
Yeah.
And so this is a guy who's been thinking about MOBAs for 20 years. And there's like reports that this has been in development for like 6 years or 5 years. And all of that is like unconfirmed. But it makes sense to me that Ice Frog would have been working on a Dota on a not predecessor. What's the word I'm looking for? The next
follow-up, like some
follow-up to Dota.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm sure he didn't.
And it wouldn't be Dota 3 because why would you make Dota 3 when you could just patch Dota 2 unless you've got some big meaningful change to it?
Right. And they made like big meaningful changes to Dota 2 throughout the years. Yes, like they added, the traits and talents and the bigger map. They like expanded the map out.
More expensive hats. There's all kinds of great stuff.
Oh my God, Jeff, the hats in this game are gonna go fucking nuts, dude. Are you kidding me? Because in Dota, you're a little guy.
Exactly.
Right?
Now
you can
it's third person. Now you can see the hats. so much better than you could before. It's gonna be huge.
But like,
well, we'll see. I mean,
believe
like I
that-
said, like I feel like there's been so many games similar to this that haven't made it.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, like Paragon with Epic, and obviously, like they just took those assets and said, "Fuck it, man, you do something," and that's back out there. But like the number of games that have tried to make the action MOBA thing happen, and for one reason or another haven't really caught on, or are getting their second shot at it, or like Smite feels like it did well for a while. Like people were into Gigantic for a minute.
People really liked Smite, and I tried Smite, and I was like, this is solid, but it's like not good enough that I would play this over Dota.
Sure,
like
sure, yeah.
Even though I like shooter games in general more than I like the mechanics of Dota.
So, I guess obviously Deadlock is in deep development still, but do you think you would play? I mean, I guess you are right now, but do you see yourself playing Deadlock over Dota? If not permanently, then is that where your head is at right now? You're like, hey man, fuck Dota. We need to get 4 lanes instead of 3.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of reasons I would like this over Dota. And actually, just to go back to what you were saying, I think one of the benefits this game has over the competitors, over those other games in the space, is like the culture at Valve. Like, first of all, they have more money than God. Like, obviously, they have.
Sure, yeah.
But the way that the structure of the company is set up is you work on what you want to work on, like to a degree. But you hear the stories of like the teams push their desks together and like, we're the Dota team and we're going to be working on Dota. And then like, eventually it's like, hey, can we make a card game? And then like some guys go over here and just start making a card game. We're moving
our desks away because we're making our card game. Fuck you guys.
And then the 3 guys still working on Dota are like, just in the corner.
But then eventually the card game guys, what do? They all come crawling back. Like, yeah, we made the card game.
Just
I'm gonna come. Hey, what's up? Hey, you got a cool mummy with a sword? Can I make him? Let's I'm gonna balance this guy.
But like it's like if there's enough passion around a project there, it seems like it will at least be worked on. Like, I'm sure there's some canceled stuff that we never saw that just like fizzled out or whatever. But like Half-Life Alyx only gets made if there's a bunch of people who are like, well, like I'm sure there was some encouragement of like, hey, let's do a VR thing. Right. But like they're not going to make a Half-Life game unless they want to make a Half-Life game.
Yeah, is that they, some of that stuff came about because they were already big believers in VR. And so it made sense for them to, and that's a situation where like the business needs line up on top of that, where you're like, oh, okay. I've always said, back when someone told me, hey man, I played Half-Life 3 and it's a VR game, which wasn't even Half-Life Alyx. It was like 3 attempts before that one or whatever. The number of different things that they've tried to do. It's exactly that, and it was why we'd always like, we were kind of half joking. I think it was like Dave Snyder that would say like, oh, they're going to make Half-Life 3 and it's going to be Linux only because they're going to use it to sell Steam machines. And sure enough, they did a kind of in-universe portal thing alongside the Steam Deck launch. Like they used that as like their tutorial thing, sort of like they did a portal themed thing for the tutorial for Steam VR. Like when they have these technical advancements, it gives them a good reason to revisit these properties that have become too big to fuck up, or like too scary to work on, or whatever. The same way that there was like a zillion years between Street Fighter 3 and Street Fighter 4, right? Where it's just inside of Capcom, the story you always hear, and it's why they don't make Mega Man games as often as people like, is because it's been so long, and it's like, oh, that's kind of gone cold, and every day that passes, it becomes harder to like go like, all right, we're gonna make Street Fighter 4 because the expectations get worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
And finally they were just like, fuck it, we've got a vision for it, and we're gonna do it, and they kind of brought back fighting games in a weird way with that
totally
as a genre.
Street Fighter 4 has a huge turning point in like the history of fighting games, and like coupled with the ease of like being able to play on like Xbox Live. But like so Valve has the culture where they can cook this game low and slow for a really long time, and it shows. Like for a game that's still in an alpha playtest, whatever they call it, like unreleased game, it is extremely polished. The hero design is really nice. The movement feels good. I've encountered very few bugs and glitches. Like, there's obviously still a ton of work to be done. A lot of work to be done in the UI. Like, the shop UI is very basic and a little overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing. The map is huge, which means there's large stretches of just kind of gray buildings and brown buildings that kind of need some more. But they've been slowly folding in more like environmental detail, like turning this kind of gray store into a shop because it's kind of themed around like 1930s New York.
Right.
Did you know it actually takes place in New York? That is canonically
weird.
New York.
That's just like Dota 2.
That's a Jersey, actually.
Oh, sorry. I forgot.
But like, there's a character who is like the protector of Spanish Harlem.
That's great. Yeah. That's actually great.
So yeah, it's got a lot of time to. There's still gonna. I don't think this game is going to be out until late next year at the earliest. Really, I think they're gonna really take their time before they like. Dota was in beta for years.
Right. Yeah, and even when they just like throw it wide open, because right now you can go click an invite button and invite people to the game. I don't know how quickly those are getting processed. Like, there was one person that was on my wish list, that was on the wish list for the game that I saw, and I was like, oh well, I launched the game and just invited him, and then the next day he was playing it.
Yeah, they changed it. You used to have to like put in somebody's. The way I got in was I had to give somebody my email.
Yeah,
that was linked to my Steam account. But then
so even that. So someone in Twitch chat like a while ago was like, "Hey, do you want an invite to Deadlock?" And I said, "Sure." And they sent it to the podcast email address, which is not tied to my Steam account or anything like that. But I was still able to, redeem the stuff and do whatever. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's interesting, and the word of mouth nature of that probably helps it feel like, oh, I'm part of the in crowd, but as that crowd gets bigger, they're going to eventually kind of lose that. But I don't know, it's
probably going to hit 100K, if not today, then very soon, because I think it was at 90 yesterday.
Yeah, they're definitely a lot of people playing it. But yeah, I don't know, I think that's, as long as they can keep the excitement going for long enough for them to start selling hats or whatever, then or to start,
that's when the game's out.
Exactly, when you could buy a hat, the game is when they will take your money for it. The game is out. And when they launch like the International Junior, the International 2 or whatever,
I wouldn't be surprised if there's not like an exhibition match, because at the International, which starts next week, Jeff. I know you're excited.
No, I'm going to be there. Yeah.
Good. In Copenhagen, you're going to be on the casting.
Yeah, I'm on the new players cast. They wanted experts that could explain the game in layman's terms, and I can do that.
That guy's getting fucked up.
Oh, that guy's like a bag of chips away from ended up in a stretcher. That's a dead guy right there.
Oh,
dead. Defense of the assholes is more like it. Look at what they're doing here with this pressure.
And the stream has been cut, and you've lost all your advertising.
Oh, come on.
I think it will have some sort of. It's interesting because like there's a lot of really sour Dota players who don't want to play Deadlock, who are like, obviously this is why Dota has been under.
I want you, yeah. They're like, why is my hero not cool? Why aren't there enough hats? It's because they wasted all their time on fighting game stuff and this other game. Sure, I can see that.
So they don't want to like piss those people off too much, but like this game is like huge among a lot of Dota players. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some sort of like cool Deadlock thing at TI.
That would make sense for them to do something. I think some people were expecting like, oh, maybe they'll announce it at Gamescom or something. I was like, doesn't really need to be announced at this point. Instead, they just got on Discord, on the Discord server for the game that you get invited to. When you got invited to it, they were just like, hey guys, you can talk about it now. The Verge wrote that article and they were, I don't know, kind of whatever about it. And it's, I don't know, it kind of sucks that they did that, but also whatever.
But also we don't really care.
Yeah, you guys just do your thing, I guess. I don't know. Well,
oh boy, talk about getting blown out of proportion.
It's a very Valve way of doing things. I think people don't necessarily realize that this in some ways is kind of the most Valve, just like, I don't know, we're just trying to make a game, guys. Like, we don't have time to talk to a lawyer to make any of that. We're just like, We're just doing
we
our,
don't have somebody whose job it is to work with streamers to get
Yeah.
them assets, and we
right.
have one PR person. She used to be a newscaster.
Yeah.
And she's great, but like, I don't know.
Well,
She just kind of like
She picked up the Doug Lombardi legacy of not responding to emails. I'm sure.
because they're Valve.
I say that, but I have not had a reason to write to Valve in a long time. And the last time I did, Doug wrote back to me immediately. But I don't know. Maybe that's. But that is definitely the vibe that Valve gives off. But
I wonder if Gabe is still out there replying to emails
in New Zealand. Is he still in? Do you think he ever came back from New Zealand?
I'm sure he's back all the time, but I'm sure it's probably pretty nice there in New Zealand. You probably don't want to. You probably don't want to leave if you don't have to.
Yeah. Good on him. I don't know. It's cool that they're doing this. I don't know. It's not my kind of game, but like at the same time, I can't help but be like reasonably excited that like Valve is just doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know. Then they started on. They're not done. They need to do more, but like they patched TF2 to kind of help fix some of the long-standing issues that has had, and that's not
bots,
there yet either. But
they did a big like
it was like a really big problem. And we'll get it when we get into the news. We'll talk about CS2 a little bit too.
Yeah.
But other games,
it's nice to see Valve give a shit. Yeah.
Yes,
like, totally.
exactly. Yeah, it's good to see like Valve out there kind of making moves. Even if like on a surface level, I was like, oh, it feels like you're 5 years too late to the action MOBA. But if they're going to be the ones that do that like last hand on the bat thing and go like, no, we made the good one, then fuck, dude. I don't know. I guess Riot will make one next. Star Wars Outlaws is out today, I guess. It's technically out Friday, you know, whatever. It's out today if you bought the expensive version of the game, or if you're a subscriber to Ubisoft Pro Plus, Ubisoft Plus. I like this game. The reviews of this have been kind of mixed in ways that I guess I wasn't expecting after playing, 8 or 10 hours of the game. I haven't finished it yet, but I don't know, man. Sometimes I just get in the mood for an open world game, and I just need that in my life. And there are fewer of them now. And I appreciate this as like, hey, I'm going to go around and do all this side stuff and find all these upgrades and make all this shit happen. And they made a good game that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't, Avatar felt kind of ripped out of Far Cry in some ways. Remember they made that Avatar game? No one does.
Yeah.
That was okay. Well,
it's always been my dream to play as Jake Sully, which is kind of funny because Jake Sully is already a guy who's playing as another guy, and I thought it'd be something. Maybe some fun gameplay.
4 layers deep. You are the Avatar now. But no, so the Avatar felt like a Far Cry in a lot of ways, and this doesn't necessarily feel like it is ripped out of the Assassin's Creed template or the Tom Clancy template or the however many templates Ubisoft has had for open world games over the years. This feels like instead they have pulled a couple of choice things from other games they have made and applied them here in a sensible fashion. But they have made otherwise what I would say is like a fairly standard open world game. And it looks really nice, and it runs. I'm playing on PC. It's been running really well for me. I have not experienced, like, people have called it buggy, and I've seen a few things here and there, but nothing massive with it. I've just been enjoying like doing this kind of like stealth light adventure game of like, hey, I'm you're a Han Solo type character. Like if you had to classify Kay Vess, she is a scoundrel in the Han Solo mold, but she's also like a level 2 scoundrel. So she's not confident. She's not good at any of this shit. And you are, kind of unlocking abilities as you go and getting deeper into the underworld and meeting all the players. And so it's got faction rep systems and all of that stuff at play. So you're doing jobs for one faction, and then now the Hutts hate you, and vice versa. So you're kind of playing the Hutts. Exactly. You get opportunities in some of the missions to double cross a faction over another. I've decided not to do that. I've decided I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to be the type of bounty hunter, the type of, if I'm taking on these jobs, I'm going to be professional about it. I'm going to do the job you paid me to do. Yeah. And that way everyone knows where I stand. and no
and
one likes
then
me.
when there's the big score,
Yes.
that's when you can pull your double cross.
So
and be out of the game for good.
Right. Well, so that is where I got to in the game last night, is the pivot point where it goes from like, all right, let's go do some faction shit, to like, all right, we got to assemble a team. Like, it just is like, by the way, have you seen Ocean's 11? Let's do it. Okay. We need a safe cracker. We need a this. We need a that. Here's the layout of the place where we're going to go take some big scores. And so like this next chunk of the game is going to be me going around and assembling this heist crew.
Is it like do you get the impression that there is a set crew that you are recruiting, or is it like, here's like 40 freaks, pick some guys?
It's a set crew with the dialogue indicates that it's a set crew with one possible exception.
Okay.
Because at one point when the robot is telling you like, we're going to go to this planet to get a safe cracker, your lady goes like, well, I know someone who can do this, and he's like, well, if you want to get them, let me know and I'll tell the other guy to fuck off, or whatever. Very Star Wars language. But it's, I don't know, like it's a very it's like that Clockwork video game type stuff of like, here's a stealth system that you can exploit by hiding around a corner. It's a wanted system that you can exploit by going and clearing your wanted level and going back and murdering a bunch of like you play it like a video game. It is not the most deep or immersive video game on the block, and I think that might be,
it needs to be.
I'm having fun with it as a very systems heavy, like, check this shit out. I killed these guys. This meter went down. This meter went up, and they saw me, so I'm now wanted. Or like those aspects of the game are kind of what I'm looking for, honestly. And I've been having a lot of fun with it. There's a video up on YouTube if you want to see that.
Click here.
Yeah, this is the other thing on that people do on TikTok. I know you don't use it, but it's guys pointing up at pictures and then going, that is, It is like the silent reaction video of just like, why you're just stealing other content at this point. The other thing that all those videos of TV shows do now is they superimpose a fake person reacting in front of it.
What? Like a CG person?
No, it's like a real person, but they just have taken a loop of like, and it is, for whatever reason, it is almost always a Chinese person. And sometimes at the start of the video, they'll point out and go like, please like and watch the video. And then they'll sit there and go like this. And you're like, what is happening here? It's like, we are through the looking glass on some really scary shit. And it's great. But anyway, Star Wars Outlaws, I'm having a really good time with it. And I've gotten off world, and there's some dogfighting in space and some other things you do. None of that stuff is, I would say, is like the deepest or like, best in class version of it. It's not, the dogfighting is fairly straightforward. You get out there, you lock onto your targets, you do your thing, and it's fine. It's fun. It's basic. A lot of the stealth stuff, same way. Like there's, you could envision a deeper system if they really wanted to go all the way on it.
Right.
But it feels like that kind of like jack of all trades, master of none situation where it's just like, this game is just kind of just doing a lot of stuff. And I think I'm enjoying almost all of what it's doing. I don't want to play their fake space card game. I never will, but they sure did put it in there. If you want to play Sabacc and learn the rules of Sabacc. As I was learning the rules of Sabacc the other day, I realized like, oh man, I could go to like Gen Con now and lose at Sabacc to people. I bet there are people that have real life Sabacc decks.
Did they teach you the most important rule of Sabacc?
That if you get the 2 dots, that's the best hand and you win. Yeah.
No, the most important rule is you let the Wookiee win.
Oh. Well, maybe I'll learn that later on in the game. I haven't seen all the Sabacc tables.
Seen a Wookiee?
I don't think I've seen a Wookiee.
Oh man, I hope you get a Wookiee in your heist crew.
Yeah,
man,
maybe.
Wookiees
but
so cool.
The game is set after the destruction of the Death Star, because they reference that at one point. I don't know how far, but it seems like it seems sort of like pretty soon after the events of the Death Star getting blown up, because the Empire is busy fucking around with all that stuff, and it's opened up. Yeah, they're like, oh my god, that was our thing. We were going to use that to blow up planets. Our whole thing was blowing up planets. You fucked up our shit. And so that has opened up a gap where now the underworld can thrive because the rebels and the Imperials are busy fucking around off somewhere else, having fucking yub nub dance contests or whatever the hell. And I don't know. I've been digging it. I don't really, like the Star Wars-ness of it has been good because it just means it's dirty and full of weird aliens. Right. And it doesn't feel like it's overly reliant on the lore of Star Wars, which would be a turnoff.
It is nice that they're still making Star Wars things for people who don't watch every Star Wars thing like myself. Like I tapped out after like season 2 of Mandalorian and really haven't seen anything since. And I do I miss having Star Wars in my life.
I tapped out after episode 2.
I mean, probably a good
pretty good. Feel pretty good about it.
I mean, I was in whatever, like 6th grade when episode 2 came out, so there was no hope for me. But like, it is nice that there are still Star Wars things out there because I miss Star Wars. I miss like roguish guys with cool guns and I know this game isn't like full of Jedi, but just like being in the same universe as the Jedi, like there needs to be something for casual Star Wars enthusiasts. And it sounds like this is like they made a solid video game. They made a video game that like, if this was on the PS2, everyone would be going crazy for it at the rental store. Right? Yes. And then like, it would be a huge like Christmas gift. Like, oh my God, the new Star Wars game. Like it seems just like right in that perfect slot there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty apt place for it, I think, is like, it's not gonna, I don't think it's like some game of the year, like world beating release or whatever, but like I'm having a really good time with what it's doing. And I am at a point where I wanted a good open, I reinstalled Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint because my open world needs were not being met. And I started fucking around with that again after all these years. And I was like, this game is not good, but whatever. I'm just running around shooting stuff and just doing my thing.
I feel that. I almost got back into Division 2 for the same.
Yeah.
Like I'm missing something where I can run around a world and shoot guys.
I played as much as I talked about it. I likened it to taking up smoking last time we talked about it, but I got into the first Descendant, which is a Nexon free-to-play third-person, like kind of a gotcha game, but you can craft the characters and all the characters have different loadouts and shit. Right. And they're all like pretty anime ladies. And so I was trying to read up on what the game was doing for season 1. And so I went to reddit.com, which is a website for scumbags. And when I got there, it was all just fan edits to make the asses on the characters bigger. And I was like, what am I doing? Why am I playing this game? Anyway, I got all the achievements in that game. I decided I wanted to get all the achievements because it was a thing where, because it had cross progression, you would get them all on Xbox and PS5 and PS4.
Ooh.
And so by getting them all, I got 2 platinum trophies. And I was like, well, fuck it. I was like close enough at a certain point from just like playing it so that I could write something about it.
Right after you had to like reset your mod Nexus password so you can log in and see the 18 plus ones.
Yes.
You can't see those when you're just like browsing it.
They're going to sell the ass. They're selling ass in this game. The hats in this game are like bikini bottoms. They literally were like, it's summer vacation outfit. Here's a bikini.
Aren't we in space? Like, aren't we like fighting aliens or whatever?
Yep.
Does that mean
don't worry about it?
Summer vacation? Like,
so it's summer somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I got into that and then got all the achievements and now I'm out. But like they're starting season 1 soon, so there's gonna be new asses. I don't
know. 3 cheeks. They're bringing a new innovation to the game.
It's weirdly enough, it's a Total Recall tie-in somehow. But we're all very excited about it. I went into Los Angeles, California, and because Microsoft was holed up there during Gamescom, they were like, "Hey, what if we brought a little bit of Gamescom to you?" They brought the hood to us and let people play Avowed and a handful of other games. Avowed is Obsidian's first-person role-playing game in the
Right.
same vein as a Elder Scrolls or a Outer Worlds or a Fallout. It is very much a game in that style. I got to play
You're
a
gonna
chunk of
fuck
it.
up some skeletons.
Yeah, in fact, I fucked up some skeletons. I shot a skeleton with a
yeah.
pistol. I put a pistol in my offhand and a sword in the other. And I walked up to a skeleton and hit it a few times with the sword and then backed off and said, check this shit out. Bah! And that was fun as hell, man. Like, I don't know. Like,
That sounds cool.
yeah, you know, the pistol does not do nearly as much damage as I wish it did, but it's a low-level pistol.
Sure, and it's a skeleton. It's got
It's
you're just shooting bones. What, like?
Yeah, skeletons don't feel. We all know that.
That,
So I played.
Hey,
yeah,
hey, that's one instance where you would really want to bat. I'm just gonna say.
yeah, yes. You're right. You can't stab a skeleton. I mean, you can, but like, what do you know?
Yeah, you'd have to like wedge it between like an arm joint and try and like pop
Right.
it out.
Yeah, but you gotta poke them in the ribs. Like, I don't know. But Avowed. So they have shown trailers for Avowed, and they have been talking about Avowed for what seems like the last decade or so. It's not been that long, but it feels like Avowed has been a long time coming, to the point where the trailers they were showing started looking really old. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're still on this thing. You're still kind of making this kind of, you know, smaller Elder Scrolls-ish sort of game. All right. Well, good luck with that. And then sitting down to play it, I was like, okay, no, this is actually a good time. Like Obsidian, I liked the Outer Worlds.
Yes,
is the one that Obsidian did. I thought that was a good, tight little game.
Yeah.
You know, not the same size and scope as a full-on Bethesda-style role-playing game, but very much in that vein, and also really fun writing in a lot of it. And Avowed,
yes,
there was a. So you're this takes place in like the like Pillars of Eternity universe, I guess, which I don't know dick fuck about. But you are a godlike. That is your character. And that is like you are supposed to be tied to it. In this situation, you don't know which god you're attached to. That seems like a big plot point in the game, is you figuring out who your god is. But as I'm walking through this area, I run into another guy who's like, I'm a godlike too. And we have a conversation, and he's like, yeah, my god has been gone for a long time. And so I'm building a machine to trap my god so that he can come back and atone for what he's done.
Oh.
And like, okay, cool, I got to go do a thing. And so you go off and shoot a bunch of skeletons. And then on your way back through the cave, he's there. And I talked to him for a while, and he's like, can you help me out? I found an item that he could use for his machine. I'm like, oh, this is great. We're going to put this. And he built a statue and hung a bunch of fucking Tesla coils around. And then he has me flip a switch, and it just zaps and a bunch of stuff. And basically nothing happens. And then you can have dialogue with him where he's bummed out. And basically I convinced him at some point, he's like, well, maybe your god would be more likely to come back if you were in the machine too. And he's like, so you're saying I should sacrifice myself? Like, it's the only way.
Look, from one godlike to another, this is my advice to you.
Exactly. And so you basically convince this fucking guy to step into the machine, and then you get to zap him. He disappears. And then you're like, didn't work. Oh, well. So it's like, it's a good, funny little bit.
Yeah.
Which is what I want out of an Obsidian game. I want like a good, funny little bit in there. And so seeing that and seeing the combat and the look of the world, they're targeting 30 frames a second on console. That's kind of been the story coming out of Gamescom, as people are like, what the fuck? And I get it. I think we were playing it on PCs. Anyway, I thought it looked sharp. It looked a lot nicer there in front of me than it has in trailers. And so I came away from it, I'd say, a lot more positive about Avowed than I had been from just seeing some of the trailers. If you want to hit guys with the bat, Atomfall is also another game in this same vein. It skews a little bit more towards the Fallout side of things because it's about a quarantine zone and radiation and all this other stuff.
Oh.
But it's in the United Kingdom, and so like the first guy you kill drops a cricket bat. And so if you want to hide in bushes and then sneak up behind a guy and fucking smack him in the back of the head with a goddamn cricket bat, Atomfall is pretty good for that. I was lost the rest of the time. It was a very short demo. So but that did make me want to play more Atomfall. Like, yeah, I'm gonna clock these fuckers with a cricket bat. It's like an episode of The Young Ones happening over here. And lastly, Concord. When was the last time you were in Concord? Out there in the Bay Area.
My partner's grandma used to live there, so I think I went to an Applebee's in Concord about 5 years ago.
Okay, all right.
What'd you think? Weird.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it's still Concord then.
Yeah.
I have not been to Concord in probably 15 or 20 years at this point, I would say. Maybe I've driven through it, but I just like actually stop in Concord.
It's a great place to drive through.
Yeah. If you have to get to somewhere, if you're like, we need to get to Walnut Creek or whatever.
And what are you doing with your life if you need to get to Walnut Creek?
The Battletech Center used to be there. Concord, I suppose it is actually pronounced, is a PlayStation and PC game published by Sony PlayStation Incorporated. And that came out, and that is man. It's a 5v5 competitive shooter. It is, you have abilities on your characters. This sounds harsher than maybe I intended to mean, but I refuse to call it a hero shooter because none of those characters seem like heroes. Like, they don't feel like they have anything, like there's not enough differentiating them personality wise.
Yeah.
And there's no ults in the game, which I think is fine. Like, you know, whatever. You don't have to have a fucking ult and a meter and all this other shit. But in terms of like, if you wanted those characters to have big personality and a defining characteristic, an ult might be a really good way to do that.
Right. You can base a whole, like Overwatch, all the heroes have such a clear ult that is tied to not only their other abilities, but like their persona, right?
Yeah.
Like Mei does the huge blizzard because she's an ice person, and McCree has high noon. And it's like, it's just such an easy way because they're so impactful. The first thing you learn when you're playing a hero shooter is what all the ults do, because when team fights break out, you're looking for the audio visual clues of like, do I need to run? Like, are we going to win this fight? Are we going to lose this fight because of an ult? Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's weird on that front where like it feels very light. Like it feels like they took some ideas from a handful of different shooters. This is from Firewalk, and they are a number of them are ex-Bungie. And so it has the overall kind of pace, like the map quality feels like it fell out of Destiny a little bit. And I don't necessarily mean that in a positive way. Like the maps feel very big and sort of featureless. And you're just kind of running around them, and you whatever, you have your abilities, and there are different guys with different abilities, and you know, some of those are healing abilities. There's a guy that's dropping spores that looks a little bit like a mushroom, so you know, Battleborn is represented here as well.
Wait till you see the fan art.
Oh yeah, I have been thinking about Concord fan art in a derogatory fashion for like the past 3 days. There's nothing bad about Concord. There's nothing like that. You're playing it and going like, "Oh, this is terrible." Like it's fine. You could absolutely play it as a shooter. The shooting is okay. I think that I like a game where I can change things up on a character a little bit more, and so I don't really play. I'm not really an Overwatch guy, and those kinds of shooters. I'm just not feeling them at the moment anymore. The ability you have to kind of tweak your character in this game is extremely minimal and has to be unlocked over the course of like 5 different goals or whatever. And then you're like, oh, I unlocked a variant for this guy. And now instead of when he does a dodge, his mobility is increased for 4 seconds. Now he just starts with more bullets and grenades or whatever, which I would take over the mobility boost every single time. But it's going to take a long time to actually unlock that. So I will never see it.
And with matchmaking times being what they seem to be now.
So yeah, this has been interesting. You know, we don't really get good insight into how many people are playing it on PlayStation, and the Steam numbers are bad too, because the Steam numbers we get are like concurrence.
Right.
We don't get an overall, here's how many people bought a game, but like launch weekend. So the game did a thing where they, you know, the expensive version came out Tuesday and the full version was out Friday. Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, what you would think is be like prime time launch weekend for the game. Their Steam concurrents were under 7. They have not topped 700 since launch, concurrent players on Steam. Now, again, that's a very skewed number because any marketing would be marketing the PlayStation version of the game,
right?
Not necessarily the PC version of the game. And so you would presume it is probably selling somewhat better on PlayStation. I went and looked at like some of the trophy tracking sites because you can sort of, again, it's a skewed look because it's not a full look, but you can take some of the numbers of like, hey, here's how many users of truetrophies.com are playing this game versus how many played this game and how many play
Right.
and like those numbers seem down as well. Concord feels like it was just kind of like launched. They didn't market it much. They did a beta that happened in 2 chunks. And the one that was supposed to be pre-orders only, they kind of just opened up to everyone, which to me is a sign that not enough people pre-ordered the game.
Right. They wanted fast queues. They wanted a lot of people playing.
And the reporting around the beta weekends were that fewer people played on the second one than on the first, which is probably not a good sign either. And so, yeah, I don't, it just feels like something that is out of step. Again, it's not necessarily a bad game, but I think if you're going to be entering what is probably the most competitive segment in video games, in premium video games right now, I guess. Well, there's free to play stuff, so maybe not premium, but like, you have to have something to hang your hat on. You have to have something that your game does that's going to pull people away from any number of these other games.
Right.
And
we haven't even talked about like Marvel Rivals is in a similar space to it. And that has, hey, Iron Man is in this game, right? Spider-Man is in this game. That's
you can play as the Punisher, but yeah, so there's just kind of nothing there to distinguish Concord as something you should play. And so like there's a lot of people, even pre-release, like kind of coming out of the beta, you saw a lot of people like in a really kind of dickish way coming at the official accounts for this game being like, your game's dead and I'll see you when you come free to play, like angry that it wasn't like they tried to make a big deal about like saying, hey, we're gonna sell you the game and then we're gonna give you a lot of content and cosmetics and all this other stuff. It's not gonna be a battle pass. It's not gonna be this. And instead of the reaction being like, oh, that's so cool, it was people going like, you should have a battle pass. You should do, like, it was like people like begging to be monetized in a way that I'm like, but at the same time, if this game was free to play, maybe more people would have checked it out.
I would have played it. I would have for sure tried this game. Like, it seems, I like Overwatch. Like, I'll play if I hear that there is a game that's kind of like Overwatch and it's fine to good, I'll check it out.
Yeah. That said,
that
said, I don't think being free to play would have actually like moved the needle on this game in a way that would make it a success.
Yeah, maybe a bigger initial bump and then just a probably similar size drop off.
Yeah, it's hard for me to find reasons why people would like stick around on this one, except for the part where they just paid $40 or $60 for it, and they're like, well, I'm going to play this for as long as there's other people playing it. They have 3 different multiplayer hoppers, and they kind of increase in complexity. Like at the lowest one is like team deathmatch and kill confirmed, the Call of Duty mode. They call it something different. The middle mode is a little bit more objective-y, and then the last mode is like round-based, like no respawn, like it's their highest end modes. And those modes would not unlock until you hit level 6, which is something that did not take a long time for you to hit like account level 6. But I want to say later on Friday, later on their launch day, or perhaps over the weekend, they patched to lower that level requirement. And so I went in and played after that requirement was lowered, and I'm like, let's try, because I was in the middle of writing about it. I'm like, well, I haven't tried these modes yet. I need to get in here and find some matches. I hit matchmake, over 6 minutes to get a match, which I don't like. Hey, it's launch weekend. This is the most interest there's going to be in this game unless something dramatic happens.
Right.
Like the idea, and they lowered the level requirement clearly because they needed to get more people in there looking for matches, because it was probably even worse before that. It's not great. There's a bunch of signs around this game that you go, hey, this is not great. This does not say good things about the health of this game, short term, let alone medium term and long term. I feel for the developers on this one, man. Again, it's not a terrible game, but like I can't find a reason to play it over a lot of other things.
Deadlock. Sorry, what?
Oh, Deadlock is way too complicated for like, you could, but I mean, sure, but
it is. You have to. It's pretty fucked that Deadlock lift the restrictions the day of Concord's launch.
You know, the Overwatch beta was the same as the launch day for Battleborn. And I remember hearing stories that one Randall Pitchford was very unhappy about that at the time.
That doesn't sound like him.
Yeah, well, yeah.
He's usually so composed.
I know.
And,
but I don't think Valve was doing anything competitively there to sink another shooter. I also don't think that Overwatch was even that Battleborn was on their radar when they were planning their beta dates and all of that other stuff. So, but you know, it's they launched with kind of the same basic pricing scheme as like Helldivers 2. You know, like here's our $40 version, and then here's the expensive version if you want some extra stuff or whatever. But like Helldivers being a co-op game, like it's hard to compare in terms of like launch strategies and other stuff. If Sony was looking to Helldivers 2 as like a guidepost for how they should proceed, that just feels like way off the mark. There's a lot of talk going around saying that this game was in development for 8 years, which seems weird because I don't think Firewalk was established until about 6 years ago. But Firewalk was established, I think, to work on this game. But if you remember, and if you don't remember, Firewalk was a studio that was founded under a company called Probably Monsters, which was started by Harold Ryan and some other folks that were kind of ex-Bungie. And they started some smaller teams that kind of existed under the Probably Monsters banner. That some of these people were also ex-Bungie people that had different ideas about things they wanted to do. And so this launched as like Harold Ryan's new, like, you know, developer incubator or whatever. At some point in the middle of development on this game, they sold the studio was sold to Sony. So at some point, PlayStation liked enough of what they saw on this thing to buy the studio making it, or the price was right and they were in a desperate space and they're like, hey, if you want us to finish this game at all, you're going to need to buy us.
Right.
And you know, Sony has, at least in the past, and maybe not so much these days, but you know, they have in the past illustrated an appetite for live service games, and they were strategically trying to go down that road. That was under a previous regime, so who knows if that even still applies. But this feels like a game that was signed by a previous regime that was, you know, bought. The studio was purchased halfway through development or over halfway, and just weird. A weird set of circumstances. Firewalk still has a bunch of jobs listed, which makes me wonder if they're already on to the next thing. It's entirely possible that Sony was like, hey, we know we're sending this one out to die. Look, we'll get them next time. We like you. Maybe they like that team. Maybe they like that studio. Maybe they like that thing enough to where they're like, okay, you're going to take another swing at it, and we'll get them next time. I don't know what the outcome will be, but they do have openings for like a principal level designer and gameplay technical design, like stuff that you maybe, I don't know, that would necessarily need to kind of further the live serviceness or the updates for Concord. It might be that they're gonna start another project. I don't know. It's not a great game.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah. And it's like a bizarre, it's just like a bunch of bizarre circumstances that you just look at and go like, man, it makes you, I feel bad. Like I said, I feel bad. Why don't we get into the news?
Let's do it.
All right. Nintendo Direct happened this morning. They kind of back-to-backed an indie direct and a partner direct, which is just like, here's a bunch of third parties, some of which are small and some of which are less small. Which is the distinction is silly to me, but whatever. I think the big two announcements out of that is there's a Tetris collection coming from Digital Eclipse called Tetris Forever that is bundling together a handful of different Tetris games. VideoGamesChronicle.com has assembled a list based on the icons shown in the trailer here. It has a recreation of the original version of Tetris that was made on a Soviet computer, the Electronica 60.
Cool.
It's got the Famicom version from '88, which is, I guess, that was the version that was the licensed version that came here. It was not the 2-player Tengen Tetris, obviously.
That's the movie. That's the one that the movie's based on.
Yes. Tetris the film is based on that one. Tetris 2 plus Bomb Bliss, Tetris Battle Gaiden, which is pretty fucking cool. That's going to be in a collection.
What's even cooler than that?
Hatris. I played Hatris recently. It's a bad game.
What? I mean, I haven't played it, but it's called Hatris.
No, don't. The mechanics that they have come up with for like stacking the hats and then clearing the stacks when you mess up your hat stacks and no. Super Bomb Bliss, Super Bomb Bliss DX, Super Tetris 2 plus Bomb Bliss, and Super Tetris 3 are the games listed. They're also going to make a new Tetris Time Warp game that is going to kind of slam the different game styles together in one kind of multiplayer thing.
Honestly, one of the things I'm most excited about is like new documentary footage on the creation of Tetris.
Yeah, so this is kind of the next Gold Master game from Digital Eclipse, like Karateka and the Jeff Minter collection. So they are going to have some documentary footage. They're going to interview Hank Rogers from the Tetris company, and and Alexei, who made Tetris back in the day, and among others. So I think that's great. Tetris is a great choice for kind of the next installment of that. It's weird to me that this doesn't have the Game Boy version of Tetris in it, and I wonder if that's something that they need to announce, or if they haven't finished announcing which Tetrises are going to be in here,
right,
or not. But I think they in the Time Warp game, the screenshots or the trailer they put out does show an art style that looks like the Game Boy version of the game. But it just seems like it would be weird for me weird for them to not have that version of the game, especially if they're going to have the other one that Nintendo made, that Famicom version. Or I guess maybe just Nintendo published it. Anyway, that's pretty neat. That's a really good choice for that Gold Master series. Tetris is an interesting story. It's just we're at a point where that story has been told a lot of different ways nowadays, between the action heist movie and the various documentaries and the comic book documentary that is actually really good. A good fun read. And yeah, the other big announcement out of that thing, Capcom announced Capcom Fighting Collection 2, a follow-up to Capcom Fighting Collection 1 that is going to have 8 games.
Did one
on
come
it.
out?
One came out. One was mostly like, here's some Darkstalkers and I believe some Street
Which is
Fighters.
the one with like Marvel 2 on it? What's that collection?
So there's a Marvel compilation that is coming out later this year. That is out. Okay. That is out in mid-September.
Okay, right.
And so that's a few weeks away, though. Their Marvel compilation. This will come out in 2025. Same platforms as the other stuff. They're announcing it for Switch, for PS4, and for PC, according to VideoGamesChronicle.com. They're putting Capcom versus SNK on this collection, and 1 and 2, or Pro and 2. Pro is like the enhanced version of the first game, adds a couple of characters and modes. It's more or less the same thing. It's the version you would want, I guess. And also CVS 2, which these are some of my all-time favorite fighting games. And and I have not had a ton of opportunities to play either of them against humans. And so the idea of this coming out in a compilation with rollback netcode is extremely fucking exciting. First we get Terry Bogard in Street Fighter 6, and now this. Yeah. But those are not the only games on the compilation. Project Justice is also on there. You know, that's the school fighting game.
Oh, yeah.
That Capcom did. 3D polygonal graphics. A Dreamcast favorite. Capcom Fighting Evolution, which is not a great game, but it has like it has the guy from Red Earth in it, and a bunch of other characters from other Capcom fighting games in kind of a weird setup, and it's okay. Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper, which was I think this came out to arcades, but it was largely known as like, this is the Dreamcast version. Like there was some interesting stuff they added for the Dreamcast version of Alpha 3.
I had this on Game Boy.
Oh, right. Yes. The Game Boy version was also known as Upper, wasn't it? Huh. Yeah. Plasma Sword, Nightmare of Bilstein is going to be on here. That's Star Gladiator 2, which is kind of a Star Wars fighting game in a weird way. Like it's lightsabers and Hayate, who appeared in some of the Marvel vs. Capcom games, came from this franchise.
I was wondering where that guy was from.
Yeah, you may know him as the guy from Nightmare of Bilstein. Bilstein is this is like a weapon fighter that Capcom made, and it's good fun. There's a lady who has a big hoop, and a guy that kind of looks a little bit like a Wookiee. Whether you let him win or not is kind of up to you. Also, Power Stone 1 and 2.
Yes.
Weird for them to not put for them to put games that are not fighting games into their fighting game collection, but hey, if they could get together with Nintendo and maybe they could include this with the Smash Brothers games.
It'd be so funny if Nintendo put something out called like the Nintendo Fighting Game Compilation, and it was just like Smash Brothers and like
Arms. Punch Out. Pro Wrestling.
Mario Kart Battle Mode.
Yeah, exactly. No, but they should put Power Stone 1 and 2 in a collection with that Onimusha arena fighter that they did. You know, maybe that would be a better fit.
And like Fall Guys.
Yes. Yeah. And Fall Guys is just in there as a little bonus. And Stumble Guys. And the Fall Guys Stumble Guys crossover that you've all been waiting for. This is great. Anything that is leading to more of Capcom and SNK working together is awesome. I would love to, if we can finally maybe someday get a CVS 3 out of this. Whatever. CVS 2 is awesome. If this is coming out with rollback and all that good stuff, then maybe that's plenty. I don't know. But
still once in a while see clips of like CVS 2 games on Fightcade, and people just like that game, that if people aren't familiar, that game is infamous for being insanely broken in a bunch of different ways, so that it all evens out to just like everyone's got some insane bullshit, and it's a matter of who gets it off first.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch.
They should balance it. Like, here's our online balance patch for it. No, that's super exciting. That also got announced that today. There was a bunch of other stuff at the directs, but that was kind of like the two big standout things that I saw. But yeah, Project Justice in that collection. That's the second Rival Schools game, and that's a hell of a fighting game. It's a lot of fun. In other Valve news, they took a stand against cool keyboards.
Fun police are here.
I know, right? Here to steal all the fun out of our video games. Just when I was getting into this whole SOCD cleaning culture with this hot item and starting to explore what that might look like on a keyboard, here comes Valve. They have issued an update for Counter-Strike 2 banning. It's a keyboard from Razer and also keyboards from a company called Wooting. that are making keyboards that basically work sort of like a leverless controller in terms of just like how if you are holding left and tap right, what does that do? People were using that in Counter-Strike because I didn't know. I've played Counter-Strike at such a low level. I did not know that this was a skill until I saw a video of people exploiting it, and I was like, oh, okay. Now I know how people play Counter-Strike. But this idea of counter-strafing, because when you're moving, your crosshair gets huge and your accuracy goes way down. And so instead of just coming to a stop and shooting, if you kind of strafe in the other direction, you can kind of come back to a stop quicker and be ready to take an accurate shot. With a keyboard that does the same thing as these hitboxes, you can the skill of like hitting this without overlapping with the other input like you would have to do on a real keyboard.
And then you don't want to overlap, but also you have to take your shot before you start actually moving in the other direction. There's like the window between where you're stopping moving to the left and starting moving to the right, where you have no no speed, and that's your window. And you only have a very slim window. Like when I played a fair amount of CS2 when it came out with some people who are like good at Counter-Strike, and so they were trying to teach me the game because I had only played at a very low level. And counter-strafing was like one of the first and most important mechanic they wanted me to learn. Is like, this is how you get better offense and defense in one mechanic, right? Because you're dodging their bullets, you're winning these one-on-one fights, you're taking better shots, and the fact that there is this hardware advantage is like a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and so I went from thinking, man, maybe I should get one of these keyboards, that might be fun, to Valve has stepped in last Monday with an update saying Counter-Strike is constantly evolving from art to maps to inventive plays and even player input. The CS community shapes the game. And they go on to say, developing one's coordination and reaction time has always been key to mastering Counter-Strike. Recently, some hardware features have blurred the line between manual input and automation, so we've decided to draw a clear line on what is or isn't acceptable in Counter-Strike. We are no longer going to allow automation via scripting or hardware that circumvent these core skills, and moving forward, and they're rolling this out initially on their official servers first, players suspected of automating multiple player actions from a single game input may be kicked from their match. To prevent accidental infractions in-game. So they're also making an update that is changing the way binds work, because you used to be able to bind like a jump and a grenade throw and like a lot of this other stuff that you were kind of automating. They're also taking a stand against that stuff. And so a lot of things that you would be able to bind to the same input, they are no longer going to allow you to bind those to the same input. So it says here, to prevent accidental infractions, in-game binds that include more than one movement and or attack action will no longer work. For example, null binds and jump throw binds. Null binds were a way for people to kind of do this on any old keyboard back before the keyboard makers stepped in to find a way to kind of automate it. If you have a keyboard that includes an input automation feature, e.g. snap tap mode, which is what Razer calls it, be sure to disable the feature before you join a match in order to avoid any interruption to your matches, which is a very polite way of saying we're going to fucking kick you out if you're using this stuff.
If you keep innovating, I swear to God,
we're going to turn this car around. We're going to smoke Site B if you don't. We're going to
six
cancel.
guys working on CS are going to come to are going to roll their tables to your house.
That's right.
It's going to be over for you.
We're wheeling our desks over here. We're no longer working on Dust 3 or 4 because we had to handle all of this stuff. I'm kind of bummed, man. I don't know. I like the idea of innovation in the keyboard hardware space. This got me going down a rabbit hole of realizing that, like, for the past 5 years or so, some companies have been making analog keyboards, which I did not realize existed. But like Trackmania players and like games that, and the sell point I think makes a lot of sense, because I've thought about it before of like, well, what if I got best of both worlds by holding a controller with my left hand and a mouse with the right? So I get analog movement, and then I still get like mouse aiming and all this other stuff. Why? And I was like, why don't games do that? these companies had a similar idea, but from the other end of like, well, what if we just added analog movement to our keyboards?
Right.
To kind of achieve the same goal, which I think is crazy. And I don't know, like it seems like the most obvious, like of course someone would try to do that. The support, like various games have like kind of shitty levels of support for it. Some are better than others. I think there was some issue with Fortnite where some of these keyboards were allowing people to build way faster than was originally intended. And I think Epic's solution was to just make building faster in ways that like nullified that advantage, is to just kind of like find a way to give it to everybody.
And like this was a thing, and this was a problem in fighting games years ago.
Yes.
They've kind of fixed it now in most controllers, but SCOD was a thing for like blocking mix-ups, right? If somebody's coming in, jumping in on you, you could hold left and right, I think is how it worked out, where you would block both sides. And even like top level players were using it. Daigo got in trouble for using it at a tournament and not really, like, his excuse was like he didn't know it was. I think it wasn't like technically illegal, but like
right,
people were doing it.
Yeah, it was on the cusp of happening more and more, and people were starting to wise up to just like, hey, maybe this is having a negative effect on the tournament scene. So that's why
that's the only. I'm generally in favor of like breaking games and getting weird with games, but I think where I get iffy on it is when it's based around hardware that you have to buy. Like, I think that to me is the difference between it being like cool and in a weird way good for a game, and like now I'm like, oh, now
it's like now you have to go pay a Razer. You have to go pay a tax to Wooting or Razer in order to.
This is my keyboard. This is ew. Why is it? Ew. Never mind.
Yeah.
I have a like $6 Logitech keyboard that I got from Target, and that's my keyboard. And now some motherfucker who's the same skill feasibly as me is winning all these one-on-one fights because he has a keyboard that lets him do some crazy shit. I'm getting salty.
Yeah, I guess I see the point. Yeah, I mean those keyboards are not necessarily cheap either. It's not like you can just go get a $6 keyboard. Well, you could use nullbinds and maybe have something approximating it. But I don't know. Normally, I'm all in favor of progress and pushing forward on this stuff. And maybe it's just something that like I wonder if it's something that like their time will come, because that was the same deal in fighting games, where like the people that were trying to use hitboxes and trying to bring these things to these games were, they're pariahs. They were cheating. They were, it was a horrible thing.
Right.
And a lot of games act weird when you hit left and right at the same time. A lot of games, especially older games, just don't know how to behave. You can find some really weird tool-assisted speed runs that like they're able to break the game specifically because they can hit those opposing cardinal directions simultaneously. And that's what introduced SOCD cleaning to fighting game scenes. So like if you want to use any one of these controllers in a tournament now, you have to make sure that you are cleaning those inputs up. Like you can't if I hit left and right on this thing right now with the way it's configured, when I hold down right and then I push left, it cancels out right and pushes left. I can still kind of like jiggle back and forth a little bit between the two inputs, and it's awesome. It's really fun in Tekken. It's really fun. It's really fun in Tekken.
That's cool.
But it doesn't. You aren't holding down both buttons in a way that the game didn't initially program for.
You're not blocking low and high at the same time.
Exactly. You're not blocking left and right. You're not. It's not having unintended effects. And so I think they found a good middle ground for this stuff, to where now like these types of controllers are generally allowed in fighting game tournaments. You just need to, you just need to be running them properly and cleaning the inputs appropriately, which the firmware on all these things has a few different options for how you can clean it. And it's worked great. Dude, I love this thing. I've not had nearly as much time with it as I wish I did, because there's just been a lot of other games coming out. So like my fighting game time that I thought I was going to have post Evo, this was my like final night of Evo, I should buy a thing purchase. And
that's how I bought my first fight stick, watching Vangi versus Justin Wong and seeing a Zangief player beat Justin Wong. I was like, oh my God, I needed to get a fight stick right now. And then later realizing he played on pad, but that was I was
Yeah, I don't think anyone in the top 6 or whatever for Street Fighter 6 was using a leverless, but I was like, this is the thing I'm going to take a chance on here. Jason A Striker has a couple of these. I know he's been a big proponent of these for a bit. And so I finally took the plunge, and it's so fun. But it feels, in some ways it's doing for me the same thing that Rising Thunder did, where like, the input, like I feel a little bit more connected to the inputs in a way that I feel like I have a little bit more time to think about what I do, instead of just like all this decades of bad muscle memory from fight sticks and everything else. There's some downsides to it, because like last time when I streamed some Street Fighter 6, people in chat were like, hey, here's another way you can do a dragon punch. If you hold this and then hit back twice and then do this, that'll also do a dragon punch. And so like I knew all of a sudden 4 different weird ways to do a dragon punch on this thing. And then I was overthinking it. It was like, well, what's the most efficient one to use here? And by the time I figured it out, I was getting hit because I wasn't doing it in time and everything else. It's practice like anything else.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to do a fireball with 3 key presses. I mean, the fireball motion, I can hit that every time. I guess DP is like the trickier one, which I would sometimes drop. But like, just like typing a word, it's like typing a 3-letter word, which is so much easier to have in your back pocket than remembering motions when you're like panicking. It just like removes one step of things you have to actively think about while you're playing a fighting game.
Yeah. I'm big on the idea. I need to get more time in with it. But though I adapted to it much faster than I thought I would. It definitely like, you know, I feel like I was 80% of the way there within the first hour. Just going like, okay, yeah, no, as long as I'm like focused, I can do fine here.
And then you would like back out to a menu and try to go up, and you would go down, and you're like, oh,
yeah, exactly. Yes, definitely. That's why so this has more buttons than this is like a 16 button instead of a 12. And so it has like 2 buttons that are mapped to up. It has an up button in the up position that I can use. And so for menus, I do this. And then in game, I either use the up button down here or this one, depending on how panicky I am. When I panic, I use the cheaty extra up button instead of the proper thumb button. But, yeah, old habits die hard, I guess. Indiana Jones is coming to PlayStation 5.
Is there like a jewel inside of it?
There's gonna be. Indiana Jones is gonna put your PlayStation 5 in a museum. That's why the price of the PS5 is going up by a significant amount in Japan.
Is it really?
Yes, they also announced this morning that the PS5 it's like the 3rd price raise for the PS5 we've had this generation. They are raising the price in Japan. That is, I think, more to do with the weakness of the yen than anything about overall worldwide price increases, but we'll see. They're raising prices on a lot of stuff in Japan right now. Anyway, they announced at the Gamescom opening night live, they closed with, hey, by the way, this game is coming to PS5. Which is sort of a weird way to close a show. They gave the release date for Xbox and PC. Obviously, this game being developed by Machine Games, who was part of the Bethesda purchase. So at one point, they were a multi-platform studio, and then now are owned by Microsoft. And so Indiana Jones was a game that suddenly became kind of an Xbox exclusive there. And even when they got out there and said, hey, we're going to bring Sea of Thieves and some of these other games to PlayStation and Switch, at the time, or in the months that followed, Phil Spencer and some of the other, you know, the messaging out of Xbox was like, no, Indiana Jones is not currently on that list of games that are going to be multi-platform. Well, guess what? Things change. And I think even at the time, it was like, oh, well, of course they're going to bring it to PS. I mean, like, this is even if they're not announcing it then, I think my reaction was just like, well, this game was initially in development as a multi-platform game. It's a licensed game, so they had to like deal with Disney, and so there's probably a lot of weird contract. Like, there's just a lot of stuff around it that at the time I was like, they're saying no now, but like eventually this is going to be a PS5 game,
Right.
whether
They're
it
saying no
happens
because they have to say no.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing where like, oh, in a year's time or whatever, like it would be dumb for them to not do it with most of their games, honestly. And so they announced it for a spring release, which is kind of it's interesting because it feels like a faster turnaround than some of the other games, because initially they were like, oh well, we're gonna wait for there's no real fast rule here, but like as a rule of thumb, we want the games to be out on Xbox first, and blah, 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 and so this might end up being as few as like 4 months, like where the game comes out on Xbox and PC in December, and then it's out in spring officially, but some people have been pinning that down as like April for PlayStation 5. We'll see if that ends up being the case. Yeah, there was Phil Spencer appeared on an Xbox like live stream after the announcement was made, and gave a quote here that Video Games Chronicle has documented here. Going to the PlayStation announcement, obviously last spring we launched 4 games, 2 on the Switch and 2 on PlayStation, and we said we were going to learn. I think at the showcase I might have said that from our learning we're going to do more. So even at the time they were like, yes, we're going to do more of this. I mean, it was clear that they were kind of full steam ahead on it, but they were trying to figure out what the rules were going to be and what it was going to be like. Oh, if it's sold over this many copies and it's a year old and we're going to do this, like what, arbitrary rules are they going to come up with for when a game can come to PlayStation? And so, it felt very much like a plan in flux. He went on to say, what I see when I look is that our franchises are getting stronger. Our Xbox console players this year are as high as they've ever been. So I look at it and say our player numbers are going up for the console platform. Our franchises are as strong as they've ever been. And we run a business, which has been his fallback kind of go-to for anything about the way Xbox has been doing lately, and any of the decisions they've been making has been like, dog, I got to run a business. Like, I can't just give everything away. I don't know what you think I'm doing over here, but like, we gotta make some money on this. And to me, the unsaid thing here is like, we got to make some money on this, especially with the rest of Microsoft funneling money into a fucking fireplace with all this AI bullshit. Like, now more than ever, the company is going to need to fucking make as much money. They're going to squeeze as many divisions as possible because they're fucking throwing all this money into AI. The rest of his quote here is it's definitely true inside of Microsoft that the bar is high for us in terms of the delivery that we have to give back to the company, because we get a level of support from the company that is just amazing in terms of what we're able to go do. So I look at this. How can we make our games as strong as possible, ensure that our platform continues to grow both on console, PC, and cloud? And I think it's just going to be a strategy that works for us. And so I think this is him saying like, hey, you had time out there, the weird Xbox fanboy community. You had time to digest this when we announced this stuff. We said back then we were going to do more. The verbiage around Indiana Jones specifically back then is not great for them to go and do this now, but it's not necessarily a lockdown. No, definitely not. Never, ever.
Right. It leaves the wiggle room.
Right. And with all this stuff, I think they've been all about that wiggle room and trying to have as much as possible. I think it's just weird if you bought an Xbox thinking like it was the right purchase for you, and now you're seeing that all of the game you could be playing all of these games and then some if you had just bought a PlayStation instead. That to me is kind of like the only hard pill to swallow on the forward face, on the user front, right? Those people are going to be the ones that get burned.
And I think if you were the kind of person who would really get burned by that, you also had to realize that, like, I know it's different, but you could have bought a gaming PC, which gets these games. So, like, if you were really like, I don't know, I'm sure the people are out there, I feel like, and this is just because it's probably my experience, the majority of people who would get really upset by this are teens and children whose parents got them a console, right? And you have the console that's yours, and that's you're locked into it. And
right.
like,
And if you sort of wanted to play God of War Ragnarok, but you decided, no, I like these Xbox franchises more.
yeah.
And so I'm going to not play God of War. And now
Like,
you're learning, oh,
yeah.
I could have played God of War. And all this other stuff. I think that makes sense. I get why people in that specific lane would be mad about this. And I think that it's a situation that was probably unavoidable for them. It's something that when, like, think about it this way, I guess, like, you will go into the next generation of console hardware knowing that this is exactly how they do it. And you can
Right.
choose accordingly based on, like, do you value Game Pass or what's the, you know, what would make you choose an Xbox over a PlayStation next time around, knowing that this is kind of their strategy. Assuming you're not a PC player, assuming you're not going to go out and build a PC for whatever reason.
And knowing that Switch is off in its own ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, but I think there's a lot of this gets based on like people not necessarily having numbers. It's easy to make assumptions, and I've been a little bit guilty of this over time, of just like, man, if they're making this move, then the console must be in the shitter, and this must be here, and this must be doing really poorly for them. And, you know, you got to have to take it at face value because we don't necessarily have the numbers here, but he is out here saying more people are playing. Our Xbox console players this year are as high as they've ever been, which seems impossible to me based on the install base of current Xbox consoles versus
Isn't that just like
the 360
literally true
or
because they keep selling more Xboxes, and so that number is always going to just be going up year over year?
Well, he's not saying this generationally. To me, this sentence is like over the history of the brand. So the Xbox 360, like I would, I would take those numbers into account here, because he's not saying,
right,
unless I'm misinterpreting the quote. But if he's saying Xbox console players this year are as high as they've ever been, to me, that says ever is a pretty substantial word there to hang on. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that their strategy like still makes sense of like in terms of like, hey, we're going to put our games on PC. If you want to play them in the cloud, we'll figure out new ways for you to do that as devices make themselves known to us. You know, they're going to figure that shit out as it makes sense. And then the console stuff is just like, as it's always been, like, hey, if you're the sort of person who wants a console, we've got one. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be potentially expensive.
It can be your all-in-one media thing, right?
Sure. It'll
Blu-ray player and Netflix machine, and
right. If that's what you're looking for, we have one of those too. But increasingly, their numbers are not going to hinge on how many people bought an Xbox. I think they're already there. They're more interested in number of the same way as any free-to-play game or website or anything. It's monthly active users, it's minutes spent, it's, how many subscribers do they have to a subscription service, and like those are going to be the numbers that actually matter to that business. The hardware sales will just be an indicator of what the potential is for the businesses that actually matter to them. And I think it is what it is. I don't know. Like I don't use X, the everything app, so I did not really see if there was a fresh wave of outrage around the Indiana Jones announcement. I heard that there were definitely like another kind of uprising of the Xbox faithful, or whatever you want to call it, fanboy weirdos. But like I increasingly just look at this as like, this is kind of like where the business is heading. I don't think it's impossible to imagine that some of the other people in this space, some of the other players in this space, might consider similar moves down the line, because games are only getting more expensive to make, and they need to find new revenue streams to like sell these games to more people. And so, all of the leaked documents around Spider-Man 2 that, that talked about its budget and how it made that money back or didn't, if PlayStation wants to keep making massive games, they're going to need to seek out as many players as possible. And so I think their PC strategy will only get more aggressive as time goes on. And so, we've
already seen it a little bit, right?
Yeah,
we've seen that time to Steam go down.
Right. And I think that makes sense for their business as well, So I don't know. Like, what does this look like in 10 years? It's like that's my question now. Is just like, what does the like $70 console game, like, what does that space look like in 10 years, in 5 years? You know, really, like when we think about like the other talk out of Gamescom, there was kind of two hardware bits that I kept seeing coming up from people that were in Germany. Talking to developers who were speaking very openly about the PlayStation 5 Pro.
Oh yeah.
And that those specs are pretty locked down and that they're in development on it and it may still come this year, and like all of that kind of reporting. And a lot of excitement around the handheld PC space, the Steam Deck, the Zotac Zone, which got announced for pre-orders recently. That one actually looks kind of cool.
What's the Zone's deal?
It has adjustable rings around the analog sticks that you can use for like adjusting things on the PC on the fly.
Okay.
And it has trackpads like a Steam Deck, which a lot of the other things in this space don't. And so navigating Windows on those things, because the other big draw for the non-Steam Decks is that they run Windows, and so you can play Destiny 2 on it. I don't know. Like,
you can play Overwatch 2.
Right. And well, you could probably. I mean, Overwatch is on Steam. Can you actually?
It's on
maybe
Steam
maybe
now.
the anti cheat prevents it, but I don't know one way or the other. But I know Call of Duty, you can't, even though it is on Steam, you cannot play it on a Steam Deck because those bastards and their anti cheat.
Yeah, man, I had to learn Linux for my Steam Deck. Like, not anything crazy, but like, I get the appeal of using Windows instead.
For me, it was just nice to have, like, as someone who has not had a good reason to fuck with Linux in a very long time, it was kind of exciting to be like, here I am back in a bash prompt doing dumb shit, breaking this install completely, and then having to reinstall everything to fix it. The classic Linux experience. Yeah, no, that's been fun to fuck around with for sure. On the Xbox hardware side of things, they are getting ready to sell new SKUs of the Xboxes that they currently sell. They announced these a while back, but these are all going to be out October 15th. And the three new models are a white 1 terabyte Xbox Series X that does not have a disk drive on it. So it is adorably all digital. And they're going to sell that for $449, which is only $20 cheaper than the current price on the original Series X that also has a 1 terabyte drive and also comes with a disk drive.
That's not enough.
No,
it sounds big, but it's not. That's not even 2 Call of Duties.
Yeah, it's well, with Game Pass, you won't even have to spend 2 Call of. Yeah. Their high end item will be a sparkly black.
Ooh.
I believe it's called Galaxy Black, but it is the, they're going to have a bunch of stars and sparkles on it. Very fancy. That will have a 2 terabyte drive in it. It will also have a disk drive in it, and that will be $599. And then for people who want a entry level Xbox, they're going to make a Series S that comes with a 1 terabyte drive and is white. The original white Series S was a 512 and not a terabyte. But they have been selling a black Series S with a terabyte in it for a while for this same price. So this is just a new color, but not even a new color. It's just a new configuration of old color plus bigger drive. And that'll be $349. Yeah, these prices, and when we look at like the PlayStation price not having gone down and the way this generation has been going, did you end up with either console? Did you end up?
I have a PS5.
I
bought a PS5.
Yeah.
I've got 2 games for it.
Mm-hmm.
I got that.
Yeah.
Well, I really wanted to play the new Final Fantasy. And then I played about 30 minutes of it and stopped. But Dragon's Dogma 2 runs great on it.
Yeah, well. I should check that game was running weird on PC last time I played it. It's been a while. I should check back in on that.
That before Deadlock, that was probably my clear shot game of the year
year
so far. It's so weird. Like,
yeah.
It's one of those games that like it's so funny and it's so stupid and it's so aggravating, but it all just works.
Yeah. It's fun
It's
to
one of
like,
those you got to respect the vision kind of
Yeah.
games.
I like games, and I don't always like games like this, but like when they're good, they're great. It's that feeling of this game is a bunch of weird gears, and you know, you get to stick your finger into these systems and see what breaks and see what happens and see how it reacts to you doing this weird thing or this weird thing. Like that's kind of like what I was saying about Star Wars Outlaws. Like that's sort of the stuff I like about that. But Dragon's Dogma 2 feels like one of the best realization, and the first game, but like one of the best realizations of that idea of like, here's a fucking bunch of insane shit that we stacked up as high as we could. And sometimes it's not going to work out the way you think it is, but it's going to work out the way you think it is more often than you think it will.
Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the only games that I failed, I would say 2/3 of the side quests completely like failed, like no reward.
Like,
And I'm just like, the first couple of times it happened, I was like, oh, I should reload maybe like an hour. And by the end, I was like, oh, that's fucked up. Oh, well, on to the next town.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. It doesn't matter. Like it's Star Wars Outlaws has missions like they're like the ultimate side mission. They're like they almost feel generated because it's like smuggle this thing from point A to point B, like things you can kind of grind on to change your faction rep if you need to. Some of those will be like, hey, you only get one shot at this. And it's nice to have a thing that just feels like if you fail this, you're just fucked. Yeah. I mean, you could go back and load another save and save scum your way out of it. But like this isn't a thing you're going to be able to just like warp back to the start of the mission and do it again. And
this
I think
is your first experience with the game, and we want it to be clunky. And if you want to be a perfectionist, you can go through in round 2.
Yeah, I like that sometimes. Yeah. Having to live with your bullshit, having to live with the mistakes you made, is I mean that more games
it works in the context of Dragon's Dogma 2 really well because it feels like such a fully realized world. Yeah. It's small in scope. There's only a few cities. And so and you're traveling on those roads so many times back and forth because you can't take an ox cart from town to town. But hey, a griffin's going to come fuck you up halfway through your journey, like 80% of the time. Right. So you're walking
you're better off just walking to begin with. Yeah, that is, yes. And I think the thing that helps make that stuff work is when failure doesn't necessarily feel like failure. We don't feel like, oh, I wasted all this time. Or, oh, I got it. Now I got to go back and do this. If it's just a thing of like, yeah, I fucked that up. The world keeps moving, baby. And I've got to keep moving with it. I like that. Like a game that kind of forces you to live with it.
Yeah.
Or doesn't make it like a hassle to live with it, I suppose, is maybe the right way to put that.
Like miss out on a big character because you didn't talk to a guy or like a huge quest line. Or something.
when they sprinkle that in there appropriately and you're not missing too much stuff. Yeah, that's probably the right way to do it. Last bit of news here. Foam Stars. You a big Foam Stars player?
That was kind of my main game for a while. I was thinking of going pro in the foam scene. Went to a lot of foam parties and you know really kind of explored my own skills and the skills of my friends.
It's nice to explore at a foam party, I think. Yeah, it's a little bit cleaner.
It smells good in there, which is like most fighting game tournaments I go to.
No, that's not a good. As of October 4th at 1:00 in the morning. Under cover of darkness, Foam Stars will be going free to play. Yeah, finally. Yes.
Honestly, straight up, I thought you were about, because I don't really know. I haven't followed it even for a second. I thought you were going to say it's getting shut down.
It's really a coin toss, honestly. Like I when I saw Foam Stars in the news this week, I was like, uh-oh, here we go. Foam Stars launched on PlayStation Plus, and it's a multiplayer only game, and it's only on PlayStation, which just, I don't know, that all lines up. If I were going to put out a game like Concord, I might have thought, and I bet that this will be their pivot when they do make some changes to how Concord is available. They will make it a PlayStation Plus game. They will not make it free to play. at least at first, because that is much easier for them to do than it is to re-engineer the entire game to be free to play.
Right. I'll check it out.
If you have, so if you previously owned Foam Stars, you will get a legacy title and a few cosmetics for your trouble. Foam Stars is not a terrible game. Like in terms of like,
put it on the box.
Yeah, like in a post Splatoon world where you're trying to make a game that is not Splatoon, but also kind of is Splatoon, I think they did a good job. And it's not on the Switch, so like if you own a PlayStation and you want to play a shooter in that vein, Foam Stars was kind of your only option. And it's not terrible. It was another situation kind of like Concord, where like there's nothing necessarily wrong with it per se. Actually, there were some things about Foam Stars that were not right. It's not as good of a game as Concord is, for sure. But better than it had any right to be. For what the pitch was, when you see it, like, hey, we're gonna do and we're gonna sell it. Like that was the part of like when I played Foam Stars before it was out at Summer Games Fest. It was this feeling of like, well, if this launches for free, they've got a shot at doing something with it. But if they come out here and try to sell this thing for $40, no one's gonna make a move. No one's gonna care. And they ended up making it PlayStation Plus, which is kind of splitting the difference of like, oh, for the first 90 days or 30 days or whatever, you can get it for no additional money. And then we're going to try and sell it to people. But no one, who would ever, like the matchmaking was dead before that game was off PlayStation Plus. So it kind of never really had a shot. But congratulations to Foam Stars for entering the next phase of its life. And if you want to play Foam Stars, my recommendation is do it while you can. Because I can't imagine that the Foam Stars servers are going to stay up for a real long time. This doesn't, games just don't seem like they turn it around here at this point, after this much time. But I don't know. I kind of liked, on top of that, they were already selling a bunch of stuff for Foam Stars cosmetically that were like, it was way too much money and didn't look cool enough. And just a lot of stuff there. They're just like, man, I don't know, Foam Stars. But yeah. Congratulations to Foam Stars. Number one with a bullet. And that's it for the news. What do you say we do a few emails here?
I like those.
All right, great. Everyone loves email. I
like getting emailed.
Everyone loves getting emailed. That's why I have so many different email addresses that people can use. One of which is podcast@guard.bike, where you can send your email into the podcast, and I will look at it in theory, and I will, and then some of them I'll put a little star next to, and then some of those will be read here on the program. Derek writes in and asks about weird party drinks. As the champion of weird drinks, I thought I would share this with you. In the early 2000s, my buddy used to come to parties with a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and mix it with a glass gallon jug of Carlos Rossi White Zinfandel. It wasn't terrible, but it was insanely full of sugar, and you would have a splitting headache the next day. What do the kids are into Borgs now. The kids are mixing. Borg? It's a blackout rage gallon. They're taking gallon milk jugs and filling it full of jungle juice or whatever alcohol they want to bring to a party, which also seems like a good way to avoid getting roofied in some other situations there. But I don't know if that's real or not, but like it's like the scare tactic news story. Kids are drinking themselves into comas because they're walking around with gallon jugs of alcohol.
Right. Nobody's butt chugging anymore. That's chuggy. Now they're just drinking full gallons.
Yeah. It seemed like it was the story I heard is that it was kind of a COVID thing of like, well, no one's sharing drinks anymore. Everyone's bringing their own gallon jugs to these parties, and mixing whatever in them. I don't know how real that is. I look at it and go like, I could see it. I could see some people doing that, like real lunatics showing up to a dorm room party with a fucking gallon jug of God knows what, and then drinking all of it. And then not knowing how to handle their liquor. and then it going bad for them. What is the weirdest thing? Do you have any like weird, like bad party drinks? Like
the drink we were drinking for a while was 2 of those cans of frozen like pink lemonade, you know, the Minute Maid kind of.
yeah.
2 of those guys, 6-pack of shitty beer. I think we went with like Natty Ice and
Nice.
then vodka. And honestly, it slapped. It was really good. It drank smooth, and then you felt like the devil had kind of piloted your body around like a little mech inside of your brain the next morning.
That does seem fun.
That was that was like taught to me by my friend who was president of his frat.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. We were just, I don't know, we drinking in the days when Four Loko was still Four Loko.
Right.
You didn't have to mix a lot of stuff together.
Puritan
but then
times.
and then when they banned the good stuff, because there were so many other ones, like Mickey's had a caffeinated drink with like a, you know, feel the sting, you know, it was like a stinger, I want to say they called it, because, you know, the Hornet was on the Mickey's bottles anyway.
Yeah. This will make you feel bad. Hell yeah.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I love feeling bad. Get me 3 of these. But like everyone, like I want to say St. Ides had one. Like all the popular brands had their this is our drink that's got a ton of caffeine and energy drink shit in it right up until the government banned it. And now all these decades later, as something resembling an adult, as a father of 3, I look back on it and go, I see why the government would have stepped in to ban this.
Yes.
I disagree. I still disagree. But there are a lot of people out there who cannot handle that. I never really had any extreme trouble with caffeinated alcohol or mixing red, because, you know, like it came after years of like douchebag Red Bull and vodkas, like all over town, you know. One GameSpot Christmas party, I had just gotten back from Japan that day. It was the launch of the PSP, which was our next questions about the PSP, weirdly enough. And I was like jet lagged, weird, tired, and got to the holiday party and was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna drink all these Red Bulls, vodkas, because I'm so tired. This is the only way I can stand up. But that was not the way. It was a bad move, it turns out, on my part. But yeah, I don't know. That was always the dumbest shit. But like mixing stuff together, there was a while there, kind of after that stuff got banned, where we were buying Soda Stream energy drink syrup and mixing that with like the new reformulated Four Loko to like put the caffeine back into it. I don't do that. Don't do that. I don't know. I don't really drink it all anymore anyway.
There's just something about the idea of Mountain Dew and wine.
Yeah.
That's like,
my vaping roommate used to mix Diet Coke and wine and red wine.
I've heard of that. It has like a name.
Calimocho or whatever. I forget it has a name. I don't know if that was the name of it. That's what they call it.
They both kind of taste like pennies, so I feel like the flavor complements.
Yeah, I did not like that because I just don't really like wine. Even when you mix it with stuff, but
this this will pair nicely with fish and chicken. The Dufadel.
I guess there's something of an upside to that. I don't know. At our weirdest, we were getting like rum and pouring maple syrup into it and then microwaving it and fucking. We were on the cutting edge of drinking technology for a while there, and then it was like, this is bad. What are we doing? And
it's bad when you start thinking like, is there something we can drink this out of that would enhance the?
We never got to that, but there was a while there that it was like, and then you drop a penny in it, and I was like, I believe that drink was called the Scrooge McDuck. Because you had to drop a penny anyway,
and you became unintelligible after drinking it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, more or less. Anyway, Josh from Colorado writes in about the PSP. He says, I need some help remembering something. I remember one of the big knocks against the PSP was that supposedly people didn't want to play console-style games on the go. The DS had games that were more like what you'd expect to find on a handheld. Now compare that with the Switch and the Steam Deck or even your phone. Was the PSP ahead of its time? I don't... The ports to PSP were never like the same as the console version. I think the Switch does a better job of representing console gaming than the PSP did, because it was always like 510 Most Wanted edition of Need for Speed only on the PSP, or here's Thug 2 Remix and we did this, and so it was always like a little different in some cases. And so I think that was part of why that didn't work as well, is because you weren't necessarily getting the same experience, and you were kind of getting downgraded versions. You were getting, it was like playing the PS1 version of a PS2 game in some cases with some of those games. But some of those games were interesting on their own merits, even though they were dramatically different. Like it was kind of cool.
Back then, it was a matter of like, it was. I feel like for a while, a lot of developers approached handhelds as, how can we dumb our game down to work on a handheld?
Right.
But like, you saw this in the DS space a lot. I'm sure on the PS, I didn't have a PSP, I'm not as familiar, but like, it provides an opportunity for creative developers to be like, is there some way we can utilize this platform and add something that is like, maybe if you already own the game on PS2, 1 or whatever 2, you can also get this one because there's a hook in it, right? There's something to this version that is unique and special.
Yeah, I always liked that conceptually, the idea of like, you're going to unlock something in both versions of the game if you have both of these or whatever. But like that was, in some cases, it was weird because those PSP games were not necessarily awesome on their own merits. But like, you could hook a Neo Geo Pocket Color up to a Dreamcast for like 2 or 3 games to unlock shit, and it was kind of cool at the time. I bought the link cable. You had to import all of it because, like, no one was doing this in the fucking States. But it was kind of a neat idea, and of course, transfarring, an idea whose time has come. Reed writes in from Halifax. Last week, someone wrote in about beat 'em ups, brawlers, like, your Final Fights and Streets of Rages, your belt scrollers, and said, "Hey, I never played these games. I now I'm playing them. Are they all bad? Like, it just seems like I just walk up and mash a button. What the fuck what was the appeal of the?" And so Reed is writing in with a defense of the genre here. And says, I needed to write in to clarify to the writer if brawlers were ever fun. They were the first cooperative games people would come across in the 90s. When you wanted to play with friends in the 80s and 90s, it was turn-based stuff like Mario or player versus player, like competitive stuff. Both had the same result when checking out a game for the first time. You got destroyed by the owner of the game. Brawlers leveled the field. You had a common goal, and a skill level didn't matter to play together. Once you understand that, more games make sense. Gauntlet sucked quarters, but you could play with 4 friends. Yeah, that makes sense. And even goes on to say, Monster Hunter allows 4 people to play together at any skill level, as most times 1 or 2 hunters can do the mission just fine. And Brink. I did not expect a defensive Brink here in this day and age, but and Brink was a game that let people of different skill levels play together by having alternative objectives that helped the team. The launch was garbage, but once it worked, there was an amazing community of regulars.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, I didn't play a lot of both my parents liked gaming, but there was never any like competitive games we would play with each other. But like, if we went to the arcade together, we could all hop on The Simpsons or TMNT, and like, we're all different skill levels at the time, and you could feel like you're contributing just by running around and being part of it. Like, there's something about like those big, taking the idea of the big like cabinet, the 4-person, kind of curved out,
right?
Like X-Men, Simpsons, those big ones are so appealing for like, hey, group of people, doesn't matter who you are, where you are in your gaming life, like come here, mash some buttons.
Yeah, I think once that stuff started coming home and they started
Yeah.
selling it for console prices, it starts to make a little bit less sense, for sure. But yeah, let's see here. I got a big long email from someone involved in influencer relations and kind of public relations, talking about some of the Black Myth Wukong stuff. I don't know if you heard any of that last week. Like they sent out this game, Black Myth Wukong, which came out recently and is apparently tearing up the charts. A lot of people in China playing it.
Yeah.
And they had sent it out early to streamers, and some people in some countries got like a do's and don'ts list that had a bunch of wild shit on it, like don't talk about COVID, or don't talk about
women's rights.
Yeah, like some really wild stuff. I'm going to paraphrase this and leave this person anonymous because they're just still working in this territory. But it kind of says, like, when we work with influencers, this person's currently working in Japan. When we work with influencers, we are required to provide them a document that is anywhere between 5 and 15 pages long, which is unheard of from my experience working in Western markets. The document will outline the game, what they are expected to say about the game, what they are not allowed to say, and what kind of content the partner wants them to make. This made me really uneasy at first, then I quickly learned that this was not the agency or developer pushing these documents. Most of the time, it's a requirement of the streamer. At least in Japan, there's a huge burden for the creator when you say to them, just do what comes natural. And a lot of times they would turn down the proposals because there was not enough direction, which is crazy. And they'll often say things like no profanity, no speaking about other creators, no political messaging, no hateful or sexual speech, and so on and so forth. But it said that most of it is like, don't show a competitor's product in the video and don't play past this point in the game.
Right.
Very, very advertising stuff. And then this person goes on to say, like, despite doing this in this market for a while, the requirements that came in on Black Myth Wukong were pretty wild. And he goes on to say, we would never suggest not to talk about quarantine or COVID-19, but we do know that gaming and content is highly regulated by the government in China. Giving this studio a little benefit of the doubt, perhaps it could be some kind of measures from the government, including this. It sounds like that just like the what is probably standard in China got sent out to people in that line of work outside of China. And that's probably the disconnect, is you're sending it to people in France, you're sending it to some people in the US, and they're like, what? You don't want us to talk about what? And so that probably created the specific issue there. But hearing that, hey, Japanese influencers want to be walked through what the do's and don'ts are, that lines up with my experience covering games in Japan. The fallback story I go to on this is we had an exclusive on like Soul Calibur 2 or 3, and I went over to Japan to interview the producer of that game at an arcade conference. And then after the fact, after we conducted the interview, and it was like a very basic interview, he just, he said not that much about the game, honestly. It was not like an amazing interview. Namco was like, okay, great, send it over to us so that we can mark it up and give our feedback on it. We're like, no, we don't do that. And they were like, well, we would have let you do this interview if you didn't do this, or, if you didn't agree to this or whatever. And finally, just because it was the norms of that relationship, the way it worked in Japan, I think we ended up sending it over to them knowing that we were not going to make any of the changes that they required. And they ended up not requiring any changes. The story we got from our Japanese correspondent at the time was like, oh, most Japanese interviews are much more off the record and much more free flowing, and they'll talk about all kinds of stuff. And so it's normal for them to be edited to only talk about the stuff that matters. Whereas I am used to the Western interview of like, they're only going to talk about what they're going to talk about. So I'm not going to ask a million questions about weird other bullshit. Right. And so I was on message almost accidentally.
Right. I mean, you're also a professional, and a lot of these people
yeah.
are just like imagine you're like you have a modest following that you've been working on for a while, and you get a game that's like you just don't jive with. You like it just doesn't align with your interests at all. It's hard to be like they they're you're supposed to be impartial or whatever, but
Yeah.
like you're not.
No,
But you don't want to just like be entirely critical. Like, you don't want to be given a product to showcase and just be like, this is shit, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. So if you have
right.
guidelines, you can at least kind of like pick and choose at those and talk about like, well, actually there's this one thing that they wanted to highlight that I do kind of like. And whereas if you're left on your own devices, you might just start talking about how bad it is, and that's not good for you. I mean, it can put you in a bad light of like, look, I got this free game and I'm trashing it, and the developer certainly doesn't like it either.
Especially like if you're doing a sponsored stream, I think at that point it's an ad.
Yeah.
Like that's a form of advertising, and so it's normal for the advertiser to have specific requests. Like when I do ads on the podcast, for example, like they send over language, and normally it's like, hey, your audience better, and I've turned down a number of ads over the years, and some quite recently, in fact. And been like, hey, this ad's not going to work for this audience. Like this is probably a bad ad here. So let's not do this. But like generally it's like, hey, we've written up some copy here and you can just do that verbatim, but we would rather you just kind of like talk to the people that watch your show the way you talk to them, but don't say this, especially if you're getting into any kind of medical anything. About
right.
like they don't want you to accidentally promise that this thing cures a disease that it doesn't, or like overstate its impact. Like there's like legal regulations in place where they're like, hey, like there's stuff here there's wiggle room here, but absolutely do not say this, or this. Or
you don't want to say this will make you feel better, because
exactly.
then you're like, yeah,
yes, it'll be like this has helped with it. Like the legal requirements around that stuff are very specific. And I think that's something that just comes with the territory in advertising. So it's not weird to me that people that are doing like the sponsored stream influencer type stuff are going to get a list of things like, hey, don't say it. Like some of the stuff that was in the Black Myth Wukong stuff was like over the line in a way where you're like, this is not even germane to the conversation we're having.
Right.
I wasn't even thinking about that until you said it.
Right.
And now it's all I want to talk about is COVID-19.
And I mean, people forgot that earlier this year, Marvel Rivals had something where it was like, do not talk about this game in a critical, by signing up for this like streamer playtest, you're agreeing not to talk about this game in a critical way.
Yes. And sometimes you'll see the way I feel about that stuff is sometimes you'll see people that are, sometimes that just seems like someone who does not know the space very well wrote that up and then sent it out there, and then someone went, wait, you did what?
Or like who had good intentions, who were like, we're still not done with this and this, so it's not fair to say that this and this are shit.
Right. But it gets written up in a way that just makes them look like total shit. Yeah. And they get raked over the coals for it, rightfully so. Google just went through this with the with whatever their phones, the Pixel 9 that just like came out or whatever, because there was some influencer program they had, and people that got the phones through the influencer program, not people who got it for like review purposes, but people who got it through like the influencer program were told like, hey, don't feature competitors' phones. Like if we're going to send you one of these, make videos with this phone. It's a flagship Android device. Don't go making a bunch of videos with other Android devices. Like that's part of this. And people were like, oh my God, all the reviewers were bought off. And it's like, no, none of that stuff ever got sent to reviewers. And in fact, all that stuff got retracted before anyone ever made a single video based on that rule set. So like no one, like people were very quick to be like, oh, they're on the, but like usually it's like a company either trying to overreach and trying to see what they can get away with, which I'm sure happens, or it's an overzealous person at one of these marketing companies that thinks that this is the right move for like dealing with influencers or whatever. And surely this will never come back to bite us in the ass. We're just wanting to do this. And it always comes back. Like that stuff always gets out. That stuff got out like immediately. But it's always very quickly retracted. Like, oh, we got caught putting out some bullshit guidelines, and of course we're going to back down from that.
Right.
Either because they got caught doing it, or because they legitimately did not intend for this, and some like junior marketing person is getting like raked over the coals because they were like saying a bunch of fucking really dumb shit in the emails that went out to those influencers. So I don't know. It is all, as much as it is like an established space, like this is still all kind of new. You know, when does the FTC have to regulate what people say in these videos, and what people are on which side of the line, whether they're like creators or they're journalists, or, you know, like all of that sort of stuff. Like I get treated both ways depending on the company. There are some companies that, like, when I went out on my own, now I deal with a different set of people than I used to. But there are also plenty of companies where I'm dealing with the exact same people that I always have. And sometimes it'll be like, oh, you need to make sure that you say this, and not like from a disclosure perspective, because the FTC regulates influencers and creators and stuff in a different way than journalists are.
Yeah.
And so it's like a bunch of weird stuff around that, but I don't know. A weird set of circumstances that kind of got sorted out, and it was not the big, oh my God, controversial thing that it maybe seemed like.
Yeah, it's so weird because all the other conversations around that game have been so normal.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just been such an absolutely normal, regular ass video game. I have not played it yet. I've been busy playing other stuff.
I'll pick it up on sale someday. It looks cool. I mean, like it looks beautiful. The gameplay looks fine, but like I think it's a gorgeous looking game. Yeah, I'm not sure that I will like looking at gameplay of it. I'm not sure that it's necessarily my kind of thing, but it does have a nice look, and I just kind of want to see how it runs on a PC. But yeah, I don't know. It's not something I'm like jumping out of my chair to like chase down like immediately or whatever. Let's see if I can come up with one more email here. One more email.
Let's see. Nope.
Wait, I'm sorry. There was an announcement today for Worms Armageddon Anniversary Edition.
Really?
25 coming 26th of September. This is breaking news. 25 years since Worms Armageddon Anniversary Edition, also from Digital Eclipse.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah, I guess okay.
Breaking. Maybe not breaking.
Was Team 17 not gonna? Is Team 17 too busy to do it? What?
They're too
Armageddon?
Busy. Weren't they making like phone weird gotcha games or something?
Team 17 started a publishing division and put out a bunch of weird stuff.
They put out
under their name
too.
Right? Yes. They did that. Matthew writes in and says, you have $30 million to make a movie, but it must be a reimagining of the 1996 classic The Substitute, set in the modern era. Who do you cast, and what's the basic plot?
So you're working with like maybe three main characters. You probably want, obviously you want your substitute.
Yep.
You want
it was Tom Berenger in the original movie.
Berenger. I get the plot of the substitute and the other one mixed up, where it's what's her name has to go to like teach at an inner city.
The Coolio movie.
Yes. I mixed those two up.
Desperate Measures? No. I forget what that movie was called, but
Dangerous Minds.
Dangerous Minds. Yes. Desperate Measures, DM, same thing.
So give me the quick rundown of the substitute then.
In The Substitute, Tom Berenger plays a mercenary whose girlfriend is a school teacher. She mouths off to a high school student who is pushing drugs into the school. Right. That teacher gets her leg broken by gangsters, and they don't know who did it. And so instead of like letting a regular substitute teacher come in and teach class, Tom Berenger decides to become the substitute so he can figure out what's going on in the school. It turns out that the principal, Claude Rollet, is involved with Juan Lacus, the head of the KOD, and they are pushing drugs into the schools, and there's a whole bunch of cocaine in the schools. And so Tom Berenger gets his posse of mercenaries together and says, I don't know what the payoff is on this. But like they beat up my lady, and we need to take over this fucking school. And so the mercenaries take over the school, find a whole bunch of cocaine, amazing performances top to bottom, and eventually they clean the school up. But also there's a massive firefight at the school at the end between two rival mercenary groups. It's an outstanding film. It's one of the movies that cements my belief that 1996 might be the best year for movies of all time. And certainly 95 to 97 is a damn near unbeatable stretch.
I agree with that. I mean, Tom Berenger's only 75, and he has a direct-to-video movie coming out this year.
Yeah. Yes.
You could
He did
probably
not
get him
play the
for cheap.
substitute in the sequel. They went and they got Treat Williams, rest in peace, and you know, other people in the substitute sequels. They were much more of a direct-to-video sort of affair. And so I don't have a ton of interest in the sequels to The Substitute, but The Substitute is an amazing movie. My go-to for any guy that could play any role, and I think as he ages, I think that this would make even more sense, but maybe he's a little too old for it. Edward Norton.
Oh, yeah.
Edward Norton can play a substitute teacher and a mercenary. I would believe it.
Right. He flips the switch from like meek Edward
Mhm.
Norton to like, I'm actually a tough guy, Edward Norton.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's tempting to say like a Mark Wahlberg or something like that, but I think he would.
Sure.
I think he sucks. I like The Big Hit. It's a great movie, but he just sucks.
Who's like a good tough guy? The first place my mind went to was Batista,
Okay.
but I think he's maybe too big. I feel like you need a guy who's like not super physically intimidating, you know? Like he would have to lose a little weight or something.
Tom Berenger was in good shape for this, but not massive. Like they played it up in a way that was just like, oh my gosh, he's a big, you know, he's hurting these kids. Power perceived is power achieved, as they say.
Oh, you know how they could, you know what they need to get Zendaya as the drug leader of the drug gang, and so you have that nice little you know, we flip it, and
it was
girls can actually be scary now.
Yep. Yeah, the guy, it was what's his name? Was he married to Jennifer Lopez for a while?
Oh, I know you're talking about that guy who sucks.
Sure, yeah. Mark Anthony is his name. Yes, the singer. Right. He was very good in that movie as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's a few different directions you could go in for that, but like I don't really.
What if we bring back Tom Berenger as the principal?
Yep. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Ernie Hudson of the Ghostbusters played the substitute, or played the principal in the first. Yes, that would be really good. Jake Gyllenhaal, fresh off his role in Roadhouse, I think would actually probably be pretty good here.
Hey guys, I just want to teach you. I don't really want to fight.
Oh yeah, I'm just here to just like
which way to the nurse's office?
Yeah, and then he throws a book in the library at one of the kids, and then says, "No talking in the library." There's a good scene in that movie. There's a lot of good scenes in that movie, but when they're hunting each other inside the school, where one of the evil mercenaries walks into a classroom and sees a video screen of himself from a camera perspective perched up behind him, and he looks, he goes, "Huh!" and he turns around, and then Tom Berenger is up in the corner of the room, like it's standing on top of the door, because I'm gonna put you on my reel, because the evil mercenaries are like all about, they have a demo reel that they can use to sell themselves to.
Oh, this is perfect, because they're going to be on TikTok now.
Exactly. TikTok influencers, not only the drug dealers, but the mercenaries. It's a PMC on TikTok. I love this plan. I would watch that movie.
It sounds like I need to watch The Substitute. The more you talked about The Substitute, I think I've only seen Dangerous Minds. It's
fantastic. It's a fucking incredibly silly in spots, because it's just like all these guys, like the movie opens with the mercenaries out doing mercenary shit to kind of set the tone. Yeah. And then it shows the lady getting kneecapped by high school kids. And then it all comes together and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. Yeah, The Substitute. Ask for it by name. And I don't know. The sequels might be fine. I never, I like Tom Berenger. I like Treat Williams too, but The Substitute is very near and dear to me, and I did not want to see some alternate thing there. Anyway, that's going to do it for emails. Thanks everybody for sending in your emails. Podcast@guard.bike once again is the email address. Ben, what's next for you? Is it another dozen hours of Deadlock? Is it?
Yeah, it's another 100 hours of Deadlock.
What do they need to change? Like when you look at it, you were talking about that there were gray buildings and just like art assets that weren't there yet. But are there things from a gameplay perspective where you're like, oh god, they got to balance this. They got to. Like, is there like glaring stuff there?
I've become really I try not to give a shit about balance at all kind of guy, because it just got so annoying. Everyone has become an amateur game dev that at this point I'm like, yeah, there's shit I'm always going to not like, but like I know that's going to change, and then eventually there's going to be new shit I don't like. Like I try to take a very zen approach to it. I mean, like honestly, just the slow trickle of like new heroes, clean up the shop a little bit. I think they worked on how to make guides a little easier to create your own. I think just tightening up that stuff is good. And then hats, baby. Give me some hats.
Oh, hats. All right. Hats.
Yeah. You can find me on linkedin.com/in/pacmanpack, twitch.tv/glentennis. Oh, if you're in the Bay Area or the greater Bay Area, come on out to the Netrunner World Championships that are happening in San Francisco in October 18th through 20th at the Hyatt Regency. I'll be there. Come say hi.
Nice. Are you going to be like laying down the Netrunner law? I'm
going to be playing, man. Okay. I was like, they were like, who wants to volunteer? And I was like, I just want to go and have fun, because like I play with some people in the city, and we're all excited about it, and I want to like go and play some. I've been very busy lately and haven't gotten to play in a few months, and so I'm looking forward to getting my ass whooped in real life.
Nothing like getting your ass kicked at a Hyatt, I say.
That's a beautiful hotel too. It's that one. It's the one with like all the like. It's like really tall, and it's got the like. It's like kind of shaped weird, and it's got all the rows of.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Now I remember. A lot of that stuff, man. I have forgotten so much. Like I could still probably commute to that old office if I had to, but like between just not driving as much and then now living down here, there's just a lot of like Bay Area stuff that is like faded away. It's weird.
Yeah, I still haven't even driven in the city. I don't want to.
I did not drive in San Francisco until I was 19 or 20, probably. I was, I'd been driving for like 4 years before I was like, okay, let's go to San Francisco. But like, no one's there anymore. Like, all the offices are empty. So I bet the commute traffic is a lot less crazy than it used to be. But
probably, yeah.
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for the show. Thanks, Ben, for coming on. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It was fun. And
everybody else, we'll see you next time. We'll be back Wednesday to play some video games. I don't know what. We'll figure something out. There's a video of Star Wars Outlaws up online right now on YouTube if you want to see that. And have a good rest of your day.